Hey everyone, how's it going? Today we're going to be covering everything you need to know about how to learn and master Pantheon. Now, I had a ton of fun on my Pantheon journey getting into games and the study, and the biggest upside to this champion by far, without question, is just how much agency you have in the game. Because you probably felt as top laners, there are going to be games that you play where maybe you win your lane, or maybe you go even in a really hard matchup, but by the time the mid game rolls around, maybe your bot lane's just 0-8, your mid jungle's exploded, and you had no way to change the outcome of the game. Pantheon, however, has so much agency that can almost never be the case. You're always going to have options to swing the early game, because not only is your lane phase extremely powerful, you're so good at skirmishing, you can attack mid, the first dragon fight, even bot, your ulti, and really change how the early game is going to be going. So there's so much room for you to carry the game, especially early on this champion. So if you don't really have a champ in your pool that has a lot of agency early, and you want one, Pantheon's definitely going to be the champion for you. Hey everyone, if you're passionate about improving and leveling up your gameplay, I've been offering coaching classes for 5 days a week for quite some time, and just seen firsthand how much my students have been improving across all different elo brackets. How it works is you'll come to a class with a VOD you like reviewed, and I'm going to help you with your early game, your mid game, or anything you feel like needs improving. And if you're unsure, then I'm going to steer you in the right direction by setting clear learning objectives. Link's going to be in the description, I hope to see you there, but if not, then enjoy the video. First up, we're going to be covering the runes. Now, runes are pretty straightforward on Pantheon. He has 2 pages, but the thing is he doesn't really have a main rune page. Both of them, the Press the Attack and the Conqueror page, are extremely powerful in the champion, so you definitely need to know the best situation to take each one. Now, the biggest factor for which one to take is definitely going to be your matchup. If you're up against a squishy champion like Gangplank or Kayle, Press the Attack's going to be exceptionally good, or even any range champ, Kennen, Jace, even Twisted Fate, Press the Attack you're definitely going to be wanting to take, because the biggest benefit to this rune is Pantheon can instantly proc it with his empowered W, the triple auto attack. It's going to make it really easy for you to get a significantly high damage trade. However, if you're versus a really tanky bruiser or a tank in general, you're definitely going to need Conqueror for those extended all-ins, because you can't just jump onto a Darius's head and expect him to let you get away with it. He's going to pull you in, go for more of an extended trade, so it's pretty hard to actually get a lot of value from Press the Attack in a matchup like that. You want to be definitely taking Conqueror in tanky matchups or Press the Attack in squishy ones. However, you do need to keep in mind your matchup is not the only factor you should keep in mind. If you're versus a champion, where you could take either rune into, so for example Aatrox, both of the runes will work well into him, depending on how you want to play the lane. The rest of the team comp can influence your decision. If you're versing a really beefy comp, so maybe Aatrox top and they have a Mumu jungle, Norla support, maybe even a Galio sprinkled in there, then definitely you'd be wanting to take Conqueror and be better in the extended fights, because the team fights and skirmishes are going to go for a long time. But if it's the reverse, maybe they have Hui mid, Zeri Yumi bots, champs like that, then definitely PTA will give you more value in that type of game. But another factor you do need to keep in mind is personal preference also plays a part, because PTA is really good for short trades. Jump on Tom with W, insta proc it, the PTA, get your Q, step back and end the trade like that, and you can really try to whittle him down and go for an all-in later on when he's low. But if you take Conqueror, especially if you get ahead early, you can have a lot more room to all-in, because the problem with PTA is if you play a matchup like Aatrox, a great example, let's say you kill him 1-3 and you've got a bit of a lead, you're not going to really be able to 100-0 him if you're PTA versus Conqueror. He's still going to win the extended all-in, depending, of course, his skill involved, right? If you dodge his spells, he dodges yours, stuff like that. But generally, the champion with Conqueror is going to be more valued in the all-in. If you take PTA, you need to play around it, which is why personal preference does have play a big part in it. For example, with Garen and lower elos, Conqueror is a lot better on him than Phase Rush, because a lot of players below gold struggle with proccing the phase rush with intention quite consistently, and Pantheon is quite similar. If you take PTA, you need to play like you have PTA. You need to be taking these short trades and really utilizing this rune and playing off its cooldown and disengaging the trade before they can re-engage onto you. And with Conqueror, you need to be playing for more in. So definitely personal preference is a factor, but most of the time the matchup is going to be the biggest indicator. Alright, now that we have that tangent out of the way, let's move on to the runes specifically. So I'll start with the Press the Attack page. The runes you want to be taking in this tree is always going to be Presence of Mind no matter what. Without it, you will be running into some mana issues, and then either Alacrity or Tenacity, but you should heavily default to Tenacity if you're unsure. Now, Tenacity objectively is going to be better in games where they have more crowd control. If they have champs like Leona, or Amumu or Sejuani, or maybe you're versus Cassante top, definitely you're going to be wanting to take Tenacity in that game. But if their CC is just so low, or they only really have knockups, not really affected by Tenacity, then Alacrity is going to be a good rune for you to take. Now, as for the final rune, it does depend on your matchup. You can take Coup de Grace or Last Stand. Now, Last Stand is always going to be more value in volatile matchups. In matchups where you're fighting each other, you're both getting low HP, of course the Last Stand is going to be great. But if you're in a matchup where you feel like you can poke him down, without taking much damage in response. So for example, we're up against Kale, you're probably going to be bullying her down early, or even against champ like Riven. Pretty hard for Riven to do damage to you. Then definitely Coup de Grace is going to give you a lot of value in that type of matchup. Now, as for your secondary runes, it's either going to be Sorcery or Resolve, and that heavily depends on your comfort on the champion and also your matchup. So if you're new to the champ, I would say you probably should be starting with Resolve if you're playing harder matchups. So for example, if you're up against champs like Jax or Riven, or not saying they're harder matchups, but champs like that, Bone Plating will give you a ton of value because they can't really pop it without fully committing onto you, and that can block a lot of their damage. So if you take Resolve, you're going to be taking Overgrowth and Bone Plating, or even Second Wind in poke lanes. Now, as for your secondary runes, you do have a couple options here, where you can take either Sorcery or Resolve depending on your matchup, but also depending on how confident you are in that lane. So for example, you can take Sorcery with Transcendence and Scorch. You know, Scorch really good for with your Q poke, Transcendence really good ability haste, great stat on Pantheon, but you should be taking this rune in matchups where you feel very confident. So let's say you always beat the Jax or you always beat Renekton, then of course you can take this page and have more early game bullying power and a little bit of cheeky scaling mixed in there. But if you're in a matchup where you're quite unconfident or just a hard matchup in general, so for example if you verse a Gragas, you're probably going to be wanting to take Resolve and take Second Wind and Overgrowth because Pantheon actually has no sustain. So having Second Wind is going to give you a lot of value. You're going to get a lot of regen back from that rune in hard poke lanes, and specifically against tanks, this is going to be great because Scorch is not that valuable versus Doran Shield Second Wind users. So if you're versus a tank that's going to be, of course, taking that, then Scorch is not going to give you as much value in that lane for winning the matchup as Second Wind would. And you can also take Bone Plating in heavy all-in matchups. Let's say even though the Pantheon vs Jax or Riven matchup are quite good for you, you struggle with it. You're still learning the champion and you feel like you just get solo killed early, then you should be taking Bone Plating in matchups where they can have to all-in you to pop it. It'd be a great choice for you, but most of the time I would say, if you're feeling nervous with the matchup, default to Resolve, and if you're feeling very confident you really want to bully it, especially against champions that scale well, like Kale or GP or Smolder, then definitely you should be looking to take Scorch and Transcendence in the Sorcery page. Now, as for our second page, it's of course going to be the Conqueror page, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, because the reasoning for each rune is going to be the exact same as the PTA page. You're going to be taking Presence of Mind every single game, Alacrity or Tenacity depending on how much CC is in the game, and Coup de Grace or Last Stand depending on your matchup, and of course Sorcery in the easy matchups, or the matchups where you're very confident, and Resolves in the matchups where you feel like you're going to struggle and you're going to need Second Wind or Bone Plating to win that matchup. Now, as for your individual runes, you're always going to be wanting to take double Adaptive Force, and you can take either Flat HP or Scaling. However, I do recommend strongly leaning towards the Flat HP, because the thing about Pantheon is at level 6, a lot of champions you play against are going to get significantly higher combat power than you. Because even though your 1 to 5 is very powerful, at 6 you don't really have an ulti in terms of 1v1. You can ult people on your way back to lane, of course, but in terms of laning a 1v1 all in, it's going to be very hard to get a lot of use from your ulti compared to a champion like Ornn where you can just ult you straight up, or Jax. Most champions you verse will get very strong at level 6 compared to you, so you really want to be getting the biggest advantage possible 1 to 5, and for that you want to be as strong as you can, because the flat HP outperforms scaling levels 1 to 6 of course, so 1 to 5 is that sweet spot where you're probably going to be stronger than your opponent in more situations, so you really want to be leveraging your advantage and being as strong as possible. Next up we have Summoner spells. Now there's not really a ton of variety for your spells on Pantheon, as you're going to be taking Ignite and Flash in the majority of your games. Pantheon doesn't really need TP, because especially in the mid game, when you're playing in the side lane, pushing it out, you can always ulti to your team in a hurry if you need to, so your ulti makes up for the fact that you don't have the global from TP. But also in the early game, your champion is so strong in lane, especially with Ignite, you should be able to dictate when you base. You can build a big wave and crash it whenever you want, because if they try to stop you, you're going to be stronger than them in the majority of your matchups, and after you crash a big wave, you can always base and come back to lane, and you're not going to miss much. So you don't really need TP for lane, so it's better to have as much early game combat power as possible and greed with taking Ignite. Now you can take TP in certain games, and specifically up against tanks. So champions like Ornn, champs like Gragas, and champions like Skarner, TP and Flash is probably going to be better for you in that situation. It's going to be very hard to kill these players if they're playing well, and most of the time if they're not, Ignite's not really going to be the difference maker, so having TP is going to be good for these lanes, because they have a ton of poke, and it's pretty hard for you to poke them down, especially in the later points of the lane, levels 7, 8, 9, the lane can be quite hard for you, and you're going to win the 1 to 5 anyway without Ignite, so it's better for you to have TP and look for more to attack the rest of the map. So for example, if you're up against an Ornn or a Skarner, and you spend the first 12-13 minutes of the game trying to kill them, make them go 0-2, it's not going to be as impactful as you running bottom, ulting, maybe getting a kill and a flash, and then TPing back top and losing as little as possible. So you're taking TP not just for these matchups in terms of the 1v1, but so you can attack the rest of their team and TP back to top and not miss it very much, because it's not as important for you to play to punish these, big beefy tanks as it would be to attack the rest of their teammates. Now you may be thinking, hey, that sounds pretty OP, why don't I just take TP every game and stop my noob bot lane from feeding, and then just TP back top after I ulti down bottom? And that, of course you can take TP more often. I would default to Ignite, but you might love that playstyle a lot more, and there are a lot of Pantheons in Korea that do default to TP in more situations just for that reason. But the reason why Ignite is so much better in more situations is because, of course, for lane, it's very powerful. It's really hard to play champs like Jax or Fiora or Gwen into a Pantheon that has Ignite, because his combat power is so much higher than yours, so it's really easy for you to get leads in lane with Ignite, but also you really want to be beating these strong side laning champions in the mid game inside as well. So you want to be getting a lead in lane, and translating that lead to the mid game, so that you can actually beat them 1v1 inside, and then ulti and attack the rest of the team freely. Because if you took TP and you ultied bot a couple times, TP back top, but Jax still got a plate, couple waves, and he's stronger than you, and now all of a sudden, the early game's over, and he's pushing you in under bot tier 2, just keeping you stuck there, and you're thinking, man, if I ult away, he's just going to break tier 2 and maybe even tier 3, the game's going to be very hard for you to play. So you want to be getting a lead in your lane, and maintaining that lead in the mid game, so that you can keep pushing this guy under tower, ulting to the rest of the map, and constantly push the game, instead of just having a great 10 minutes and then getting shit on for the rest of the game. So Ignite, of course, is going to be great against champions like that, but it's also good against bruisers like Aatrox and Renekton that have a lot of healing, so that you can cut that down, and still win the matchup and the all-ins at the later point in the lane against those champions. So these are definitely going to be your 3 main spells, although there has been some experimentation in Korea with Ghost on Pantheon. I would say stay away from it for now. In my opinion, this is a one-trick, getting lost in the sauce a little bit, just messing around, because when a one-trick wants to play a new champion, he just changes the build or the summoner spells and messes around like that. So objectively, Flash is going to be the better choice on Pantheon in over 99% of the games. So I'd say Ghost is not really something you need to try unless you're already extremely experienced on Pantheon, and then in that case you can take it. In 2 comps that can easily kite you, heavy range comps with a lot of disengage, Ghost can be quite good, but of course just default to Ignite Flash in a lot of carry matchups or strong bruisers, and TP and Flash in matchups where you're up against tanks like Ornn, or neutralizers like Tahm or Skarner. Next up, we're going to be covering the item builds, and as for your starting item, I strongly recommend going Doran's Blade in the majority of your matchups. This item gives you the most early game combat power by far, which is exactly what you want. You want to be gaining a lead 1 to 5 in most of your matchups, so Doran's Blade is going to be the item best suited for that. Now there are some alternatives. You can go Longsword refillable start and save 500 gold and try to get to your Eclipse as fast as possible, so you'll delay boots as well. You won't go D-Blade or the potion, you've got refill, so you can get Eclipse a lot faster, and this is best in matchups such as Skarner or Poppy or Tahm Kench, where it's probably going to be pretty hard to kill them anyway, 1 to 3. They're very safe and very tanky, so just going Longsword and getting a Eclipse as fast as you can be better in those matchups, but even then you can still go Doran's Blade and play very aggressive, because it's still another player on the other side of the screen playing those champions. So if they try to trade and fight you back and you've got Doran's Blade more combat power, you can win the matchup even harder. But if you do run into those champs and you feel like you're not gaining an advantage, then Longsword as more of a scaling option can be good for you. Now Doran's Shield, I would stay away from this if you're very experienced on Pantheon. If you're just learning the champ, however, or you feel not that confident in your matchup, you can go Shield into matchups like Kennen or Gragas and get some regen back from their poke. Those are the 2 matchups where I feel like it would be best suited, or even another tank like Ornn. D-Shield can be quite good, but even then, I still believe Doran's Blade and Longsword are better if you're very confident on the champion. Now, as for your first buy, most of the time you want to be stacking swords and getting Eclipse as fast as possible. It's very rare. You want to be getting tier 2 boots on Pantheon and delaying Eclipse by 1100, so most of the time you're just stacking swords, trying to get an early refillable, or even pickaxe refillable if you can, and you're going to be in a good spot. You should stay away from the cauliflower hammer, whatever it's called, and building that, because it did get nerfed recently, and you're spending a lot of gold on insufficient stats, when just getting pure AD from longswords and pickaxe, and getting that into your Eclipse is going to be better in the majority of your cases. Now, you can get brutalized as your first recall if you do the Axiom Arc build, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, but most of the time on your first recall, it's just going to be as many swords as you can carry. Now, as for your first item, most of your matchups, you're going to be wanting to rush Eclipse as fast as possible. It's very rare that you'll delay this item for tier 2 boots. You want to be getting it as fast as you can. Sometimes you can go tier 1s. Let's say you base on 1,000 gold, 2 swords and boots. If you already have a refillable, that can be fine. But you never really want to spend 1,100 gold on tier 2s and delay it unless it's just very obvious. They have Gragas top, a Mumu jungle, something like that. You can. But in most of your games, you're going to be wanting to rush Eclipse extremely fast without delay. Once you have this item, you're going to spike extremely hard. It works very well on his trading patterns, really good versus range champs and bruisers alike, so it's going to do very well for you. Now, if you're up against a full tank champion, like a Cassante or a Tahm Kench or an Ornn, then Black Cleaver is actually going to be a better first item. This item pairs very well with Conqueror, and your Empowered W not only stacks your Conqueror quite quickly, but also all of the Black Cleaver stacks. So it's very good for tank shredding and winning extended altercations against champs like that. Now, the third option can also be the Profane Hydra. Now, this is mainly built by one really high elo Korean challenger Pantheon player, and he loves building Profane into Blade the Ruined King second. He does it in the majority of his games. I think it's just his lost in the one-trick sauce a little bit, but it is very strong in games where you need to have a lot of individual 1v1 power. So if you're up against a champion like Gwen, for example, or a Fiora, and you have Ignite, Profane Hydra, Bork, you're going to be really favored in that 1v1. But let's say you have a pretty even lane and you go Eclipse and Black Cleaver, he's going to have a bit more 1v1 power than you unless you're already far ahead from him on that point. Now granted, you should be ahead of him from laning phase, but this item is going to guarantee that you win the side unless you're very far behind. Having Profane and Bork, you can farm really quick as well, so it just makes you a bit more flexible. You can farm camps with Profane as well, a lot better, so it is a good choice to do, but I would stay away from it unless you're very experienced on the champion. Especially if you're starting out or you're a mid-range level Pantheon, just go Eclipse in the majority of your lanes or Black Cleaver versus tanks and you're going to be fine in most situations. Moving on to your second item. Now in the previous patch you would go Sundered Sky, Eclipse Sky together, really good for 1v1 power and team fighting, a good balance. But now that it got nerfed pretty heavily, you want to stay away from this item for now and go Black Cleaver or Spear of Shojin in the majority of your games. You want to have a lot of ability haste on this champion when you're getting to that point where you're skirmishing and team fighting a lot. Weaving in and out of your spells is a key part of playing this champion. So having Black Cleaver into beefy comps or against tanks is going to be very good. Or Spear of Shojin if you're up against a full squishy comp can work really well as well. Now Bork, you can build Eclipse Bork. Technically, if you feel like there's just no way we're going to win a team fight. It's just Doom, my whole team got destroyed, and I'm up against, a Trundle or a Yorick or something, Bork can be a good second item in that case. Most of the time, you should be able to win your lane and win the side lane with Black Cleaver or Shojin anyway. Now, some alternatives, you can go more of Mormortius into heavy AP comps. Maybe it's Rumble top, Nidalee jungle, something like that. More would be a great second item, maybe even a first item in that case. Of course, if it's overkill, you can go up first, or you can go Sterak's Gauge in games where you feel like you're going to be more of a frontline. Maybe you didn't get a big lead in your lane, and maybe this game is just pure team fighting, not much time for side laning, and you're the only frontline. Sterak's can be a great item. Soak up a lot of that burst. It did get nerfed as well, but in my opinion the nerf is not that big. It's still a fantastic item, so it's something you can build if you feel like you need to be a bit more of a frontline for your team. And of course Steph's Dance, similar to Moore, except for the AD variant. If they have a really heavy AD comp, some AD burst assassins, it can be a great pickup as well. And Serpent's Gauge is a great item because most of the time on top lane, you can't build this. It's unfortunate if you're playing Jax or Renekton and they have a lot of shield users. I guess on Renekton you don't need it, bad example. If you're playing Jax or Zed or something, you're not going to be able to really build this item if they have a Lulu or a Janna or something annoying. You have to rely on your team, but Pantheon can actually do it. You can build Serpent's Bang in games where, yeah, exactly, they have a Lulu or a Janna, they have a bunch of shields, and you want to be the one to cut it, especially if they have an Ivern in jungle as well. You should look to pick up this item as quickly as you can. Moving on to your third item. Now, if you picked up Black Cleaver or Shojin as your second item, don't be afraid to now pick up the alternative. These items are great together, even if you went Black Cleaver first. Cleaver Shojin, these items work very well together. It gives you a lot of haste and a lot of room to weave in and out of the fight, which is exactly how you want to be playing it. Now, another item you can get is also the Edge of Night. This item is great for many reasons, of course. It gives lethality, but the shield can actually be very good in certain games. So if you're trying to blow up a specific squishy champion, and there's a major disengage spell in the game, let's say, for example, you're up against a Zeri, but they have a Janna, maybe Smolder, Lulu, something like that, Lulu ulti. This is a great pickup, because on most champions, when you pick up Edge of Night, you're going to be walking towards AD carry, sadly, and another champ in the team fight is going to pop the shield with a spell. But on Pantheon, you have the luxury of being able to ult directly into the fight. They're going to panic, they're going to throw out the Janna ulti, Janna Q, Lulu ult, something like that, and the Edge of Night can block that CC and make it so you can still land onto the AD carry without getting cancelled. They're good against champs like Poppy, Gragas as well. Basically, if they have major disengage and you're looking to blow up squishies in the fight, this can be a good item to grab. Now, Mortal Reminder is the best armor pin item on Pantheon, but keep in mind armor pin is not a really needed stat on him. Your ulti actually gives you enough, and we'll talk about that later in the ability section, but having this and armor pin makes it a little bit inefficient. You only pick up this item if you need the healing cut and the armor pin together. So if you're up against Aatrox top, and maybe he's doing the tank build with Death Stance, or they have tanks in the rest of their comp, a lot of healing, Soraka support, this can be a great pickup for you just because the alternative healing card item, the chainsword thing, is just so horrible. I'd stay away from it, and Mortal Reminder is going to be a better alternative. Now, same reasoning before for Steerax or for Moore. If you need to have beefy stats at this point, Steerax is going to be better as a third item than second, in my opinion. So from this point, if you want to be a bit beefier, Steerax will be a great pickup, especially if you don't already have Merc Treads at this point. The tenacity does feel quite nice. Or, of course, for his AP champs, you can get Sundered Sky at this point. I wouldn't do it very often. It can be good in games where you're really hard snowballing and you just want to give more damage. In that case, it's fine. If you're really fed and looking to just continue snowballing and close out the game, it can be a good pickup, but most of the time there are going to be better items. Now, if you need some armor, other than Death Stance, Frozen Heart or Iceborne Gauntlet can be a great pickup. Iceborne Gauntlet is good against heavy range comps. You'll get a lot of value from the slowing effect, and Frozen Heart is just a great cheap item to pick up, especially if they have multiple auto attackers. So if they have Great Jungle or a Yasuo mid or something like that, this can be a good pickup. And Serpent's Fang, same reasoning as before. Now, as for Hullbreaker, pretty rare that you'd go this item. I'd only go this item if it's just completely doomed. You're not going to be able to group in teamfight, your team's getting wrecked, but you got to lead in lane. You can pick up this item and look to win through side. Maybe if you win the Axiom Arc build as well, with Bork and Hullbreaker as your third item, that could be a great build for purely side laning and winning, but in most of your games that's not going to be a win condition on Pantheon, so only build it if you feel like there's just no way I'm going to be able to group and make a play with my team. And as for rounding off your build, it's going to be the same reasoning for all of these items. The only new one is Juxtra the Protein. This is a great item to pick up later on, especially if you have built more Distance or more Frozen Art, one MR, one armor item. This can be a fantastic item to buy. Give you a lot of survivability in fights, especially in games where you're really the only frontline your team has. However, you don't have to build this game every game just because it's 6 items. There are a lot of games where you need to be more of a damage threat, you can pick up more damage in that case, but if you've already got, especially more in Death Stance together, this will be a great item for you to pick up as a last item. And I also have some examples down below of some full builds, but of course it's always going to heavily depend on the game state which items you build, but these are what your build is going to look like more often. Next, we're going to be covering the laning phase, and the biggest thing you need to keep in mind for laning on Pantheon is you are the king of short trades. You really want to be poking down your opponent and taking no damage in response, so 100 to 0 trades, and never really looking for extended all-ins unless they're already low. It's going to be pretty rare that you can beat somebody full HP versus full HP in an all-in unless you've laid down the proper groundwork. You're looking to poke them down as low as you can, and then all-in them later on when there is a big HP disadvantage. So I haven't played this lane the best, to be honest. Level 1, I tanked a couple Qs from him. I should have been spacing better, but as you can see, I have not traded a single auto attack against this guy. I'm just permanently queuing him every single time I can, and it's really important for you to learn the range of the Q. Longer than it looks, even the baby Q, so it's really easy to poke somebody from far away and give them no avenue to poke you back. So here, you can last hit with it too. I'm not giving him any room to trade onto me. So I dodge his Q here, Q him back in response. That's what I should have been looking to do level 1 if I played it a bit better. But as you can see, I've only taken a little bit of damage and his HP bar is just getting lower and lower. Every single time they go for a last hit or they try to trade onto you, that is going to be the optimal time for you to look for a Q and poke them down. And then when they're low enough, then you can look for an all-in. Now, something you'll notice, I'll go back, is even though I gave him push, I did not let him crash this wave. I blocked the caster minions from reaching tower, so that the wave would freeze outside of my tower, and I can continue to poke him down, because if I let him completely crash the wave and bounce it back, eventually it's going to be in a spot where he can run me down with Ghost Flash, which is definitely not what I want to happen. Or he could have even based and got all that HP back, and in another game, when I'm versus a champ with TP, if you let them crash, they can base TP, and all of your hard work's going to be undone. I'm looking to keep him stuck here, continue to poke him down. I'm going to be looking to all-in him at a timer where he's low enough that I can kill him without the fight going for too long. So that's going to come up quite soon. Probably I'll go for one more poke. Nope, jumped straight onto him, proc my PTA, insta-Q, auto-E, ignite. As you can see, I blew all my spells extremely quickly, and I killed him when I only had 4 stacks of bleed on me, so I didn't let the fight go on for very long. I held my Q in the end too, because I knew he was going to be looking to try flash it. Worst case scenario, I could have flashed after him with my Q and guaranteed the kill, but as you can see, I only went for an all-in when he was already low HP, because if he was 200 HP healthier, he probably would have beat me. So it's really important for you to lay the groundwork down and get them poked as low as possible before you go for these all-ins, especially against champions like Darius or Olaf or Jax that really want to be looking for a full HP versus full HP fight where they can run you down before you poke them. Now, although that should be your default for the majority of your matchups, especially if you're unfamiliar with them, you still have an exceptionally strong level 1. You've got Ignite, Press the Attack, Pantheon Q, so you still want to be looking to abuse your level 1 in matchups where you're stronger. So in this game, I'm up against Yone, and for some reason this guy took Fleet, instead of lethal tempo, probably because the matchup was hard, so I knew his lethal 1 was not that strong. If he had lethal tempo, I of course would not have wanted the fight to go on for too long. But as you can see, trying to extend the trade, trying to make it go for as long as possible, just really abuse how short my Q cooldown is, and look for this all in. So you're still a very strong champion level 1. I don't want you to, watch that Darius lane and go, alright, every single matchup, I'm just going to sit back and Q. If you are stronger than the champ level 1, you really want to be looking to abuse that and punish them as hard as you can and guarantee push in the matchup. So of course you're going to be getting level 2 before them, level 3, and you can really set the pace of the lane and matchups where you have a stronger level 1. The example against Darius was for if you're against champions that have a strong level 1 and a very strong all-in, you need to be very careful not to give them, full Darius bleed, full Conqueror, lethal tempo, whatever the champ may be. But if you're up against a Grasp champ or a Fleet champ, or just a weak champion in general level 1, really look to abuse them. It's fine to take a bit of HP because you can always recall after crashing your wave anyway. So I wanted to quickly show another example of abusing your strong level 1, and this game is going to be Spearshot, a EU West Challenger Pantheon streamer, playing up against a Gragas. Now, if you tried to play this lane, the way I played up against a Darius, or I would play up against an Olaf or a Jax, where you're poking them down and staying high HP yourself, 100 to 0 trading, it's not going to go well for you. This is a great matchup for Gragas. He can poke you down as well. With Q, he can cancel every single W with his E, so this matchup can be very difficult. So what you want to do is make the matchup very volatile, which is a big reason why I believe Pantheon has a deceptively high skill ceiling, because he has a lot of variance in terms of how he would play the matchup. So we'll show the example here. He's playing up against a Gragas. If this Gragas gets to level 6 or 7, gets a Catalyst even, the Pantheon is going to get completely destroyed. But what he does, instead of just sitting back and queuing, you can see he's already dropping auto attacks and extending the trade. He's not playing for 100-0 trades in this type of matchup. He's getting both of you low HP. That is always going to favor Pantheon when you're playing into a matchup like this, because you're going to have the more direct burst. So as you can see, not letting him touch the wave, not giving him much time to sustain, making the trades really quick. And even here, he burns a Gragas flash, playing really aggressive, abusing the fact that he hit 2 before him, and then he even flashes after with the Q. Really great kill by him, but the biggest thing that was impressive to me is how he made this matchup, extremely volatile. You really want to be doing that into matchups like this, like Skarner and Gragas, making it really volatile early, before they get to the point where they can just chunk you for 200, 300 HP at a time, and out-sustain your damage. You really want to get the lane as volatile as possible and play for kills before you get outscaled in these types of matchups. For our next matchup, we have Pantheon versus Twisted Fate, and I wanted to showcase this as an example of how to play against ranged top laners as Pantheon. I know a lot of people really hate versing ranged tops, fair enough, but Pantheon can actually do quite well onto them. You have a lot of room to make the matchup volatile, you have a lot of gank setup, and this guy here, he's a high rank Korean Challenger Pantheon, elite. He doesn't really need the gank setup aspect in this lane, but you can learn a lot from how he played this matchup. Now, instead of starting Q, where if you start Q, you can maybe go for little trades, maybe they space out a Q, you go for the long range run, they block the majority of the damage with, with the wave, and they're poking you when you go for CS. But he's not playing for the wave at all. He just instantly starts W, jumps onto him and procs PTA, even though he knows he's going to take damage in response. You really want to be making the matchup volatile in a lane like this, because the range champ's win condition is to poke you down lower and lower, and abuse the fact that you have no sustain, and then eventually you're going to be too low to all in him. So you want to be trading with him, trading your HP bar for his, and getting both of you to that low HP. Of course, it's better if you're high HP and he's low. If you can play it like that, you're the king, but it's fine to trade your HP bar for his and make the matchup as volatile as possible. So you can see he fakes clicking back, even though his W's coming back off cooldown, goes back in again, pops Ignite, even though he knows he's not going to kill. So he clicks back now. He's happy to burn Ignite and W just to make the matchup as volatile as possible. He made this TF get low HP in exchange for his own health bar, and now he's able to have full control of the wave, because he knows, TF knows if he walks up, he's going to get flashed on by this Pantheon and instantly killed, which is a big concern of range shops. If they're low HP, they're very easy to kill, but if they can stay high HP and poke you down, then you're going to really struggle in this lane. So now, because TF doesn't have TP, and a lot of range shops you probably verse, Vayne with Ghost, Smolder, TF with Ghost, champs like that, won't have TP. If you can take these really volatile trades against them, maybe get a kill, maybe just make them base, the lane is going to be in your favor unless you make a mistake from that point. Now, our final concept for the early game / laning phase on Pantheon is going to be share your strength to the rest of the map. Your champion is so strong early game and so strong in lane, but don't just tunnel on the laning aspect, especially if your opponent is already far behind, or if they're playing extremely safe, or if they're just playing a champion that's going to be useful in the game regardless. So if you're up against a tank, Ornn or something like that, it doesn't really matter if you stay in lane bullying the whole game. If you have other options, of course, those are going to be better in the majority of your cases. So here, I'm playing up against Bria, which is worth getting behind, don't get me wrong, but look how safe this guy is playing. He's sitting really far back, he started E, he's not really touching the wave at all, and another trick you can do As you just saw, if they're sitting really far back and respecting, you don't need to do the short cooldown baby Qs. You can go for the extended one and look to poke them down from far away, because you don't really need the reduced Q cooldown if they're not touching the wave and if they're just playing like a complete coward anyway. So as you can see, slow pushing this wave, denying him as much as I can while poking him as much as I can, and when he has E, he feels more confident to walk up, which is fine, but he's losing a lot of farm in this lane, which is fine. So I'll skip ahead a little bit. I slow push this wave 3, I choose to crash wave 4 in this game, because he pushed all the creeps back, he slowed it down for me, so I chose to crash wave 4, but because he's playing so safe, it's very unlikely I'm going to be solo killing him 1 to 3 in this lane. So instead what I do is I stay high HP, I crash this wave really quickly, and then I look to attack the rest of the map. I run into the jungle, I see Hui TP's mid, he used his flash, I see in chat, so I'm looking to attack him, and very creative with it, as you can see, avoiding his vision line, pop my E for the movement speed, flash stun, and we're able to pick up a nice kill on mid. Now this guy just TP'd back to lane and instantly died, so of course this is going to really change the outcome of the mid matchup, and even though I will miss a little bit of CS and I miss out on time, where I could be poking this way, it's definitely going to be worth it in this game because the mid matchup is a lot more volatile. Next up, we have ability tips and tricks and comboing it. We'll start with Pantheon's Q, and a vital piece of information on this spell is your Q will crit your opponent if they're below 20% HP. So it's really important for you to get a good feel for when your opponent's below 20%, because your damage is going to be significantly higher if you can get them to 20% before you Q, so it's really important for you to learn the threshold to get that bonus damage. Now with Pantheon's Q, you have two choices with it. You can either release it early for a quick stab and get 60% of the cooldown back, and also you won't have reduced damage when you're going through creeps, or you can hold on to it and release it for a longer range. Now the range is significantly longer with the thrown Q, but the cooldown will also be longer as well, and the damage will be reduced if you go through a creep or a different target. Now on that point, it can be quite important for you to get a good feel for how long you can actually hold on to the Q before it changes from the stab to the fully ranged throw. Because if you just tap your Q every single time, just insta-Q and release your finger from the key, your Q success rate is going to be a lot less accurate. Try to get a good feel and practice tool. You can hold it briefly for a brief duration before it changes from the stab to the longer one. And what that'll do is it'll give you more time to aim your Q and guarantee the hit. If you just hold on to it, and then if you just tap it, instantly every single time with your mouse on your opponent, you're going to miss a lot more than you should. But if you hold the Q for that brief duration and relocate, depending on how your opponent's moving, your success rate is going to be a lot higher. Now every single one of Pantheon's abilities and his basic attacks will give him a stack of his passive. So if you're just leaving your lane, maybe use the empowered Q to one-shot the wave and you're looking for a roam. Now it's going to be a roam without ulting. You want to be queuing the air as you walk, because when you ulti you get your whole passive back anyway, so it's unnecessary. But if you're running into the enemy jungle, for example, or looking for a grub fight, you want to be queuing the air as you walk to stack it up and be ready and as full power as possible for the upcoming skirmish. Now, a little trick you can do with the Q is you can actually Q and then flash. You don't have to flash and then Q first. You can buffer the Q animation and then flash, and it's still going to redirect the Q exactly where you want it. Now, this is a lot harder for your opponent to react to, so I strongly recommend this if you're going for a flash follow and trying to kill your opponent. Now, keep in mind it's not just the short range Q that you can Q flash, you can also Q flash with the fully ranged one. So if your opponent's really far away, they're just out of Q range when you're charging Q and chasing them, you can look to Q flash after them with the fully ranged one. Now that is easier said than done, because you will be slowed while you're fully charging your Q and walking towards your opponent, but if you can pull it off, you will be a bit of a beast. Now a big mistake I see Pantheon players make, especially when they're looking to solo kill somebody, is they rush into their Qs. Don't be afraid when your opponent's low HP, just walk towards them. Just hold your Q, staunch them with your body language. They're going to be trying to juke left and right, especially if the Q is going to be a crit one that kills them. They're going to be trying really hard to dodge it. So if you just Q straight away, they're actually going to have a chance to dodge it. So just walk towards them, staunch them out, and look to hold on to your Q until it's a guaranteed hit. Now, although your Q does have a bit of an animation, you can cancel that animation with your W, and you can also cancel it with your E. Now, this can feel quite good for your comboing, but you do need to be a little bit wary around your passive. If you take the press the attack page especially, and you lead with Q on 5 stacks and then W just for the animation cancel, you're not going to be able to get the triple auto attack down from empowered W, and you won't be able to proc your press the attack. You have to be extremely careful of that. Make sure you're only doing this if you're bursting somebody down, trying to one-shot them, or maybe you're on 4 stacks or 3, something like that. Then you can QW. It'll feel quite good, but QE is the main one that feels exceptionally good, because you Q somebody, your Q goes on cooldown, you put up your E, and that 1.5 seconds where they can't damage you and you're wasting their time actually doing damage to them as well, your Q is ticking back off cooldown, so you're probably going to get a second Q in that type of trade. Moving on to Pantheon's W, and a key part about Pantheon's W is the empowered version, where it's going to proc 3 auto attacks directly after Wing. So if you take press the attack, it'll instantly pop that rune, and then if you Q straight after, you're going to be getting the enhanced damage. It's really important to combo that way, especially if you're taking PTA, but even if you take Conqueror, you're still going to want to be leading with empowered W most of the time, because the W itself will give you 2 stacks, and then the triple auto will give you another 6, so you're going to be 8 stacks of Conqueror straight away. So if you W, triple auto, Q auto, E, you're going to be at full stacks of Conqueror already pretty much straight away. Now, because Pantheon's W has a bit of an animation, you can actually buffer this through stuns. Now, keep in mind you can't buffer it through knockups or knockbacks or anything like that. You're going to get defeated in that aspect. So if you try to W Aggravacy, you're going to lose. But through stuns, you're going to be just fine. If you W just before, let's say, for example, Jack's E hits you, you're still going to get your stun off, and you're both going to be stunned in that type of situation. Really important in matchups like Renekton or Jax, anyone with a stun really. You can buffer your W through their stun, you're both going to be CC'd at the same time, so they won't really have an advantage in that aspect. And another trick you can do is you can actually preload your W. So let's say, for example, the lane's super volatile, you're both 1 HP, and you feel like your opponent's going to flash auto you or something like that. You can preload your W, so that as soon as they get in the range of it, your character's going to do it straight away. Pantheon W is quite fast, you're going to be getting that off a lot faster than a lot of other champion spells or auto attacks. So if you have that preload buffered ready to go, as soon as they get in range, you're going to be able to catch them off guard. Now, the final tip for your W is a bit of a banger, where if you're already on 5 stacks, if you cancel your own auto attack animation with your W, you're going to get an extra stack from that auto attack. So if just before your auto hits them, you cancel the animation with W, your W will instantly deplete your 5 stacks of passive, the next auto will already go through, get that stack, and then you auto attack with the empowered W, give 3 more, it's going to be a lot easier for you to get the 5 stacks straight away. Moving on to Pantheon Z. Now, the empowered version of the spell will give you 60% movement speed for 1.5 seconds, which can be very good, don't get me wrong, especially if you're disengaging or chasing someone down. Be very careful for a 1v1. You are giving up some combat power with the enhanced Q or the enhanced W for movement speed, so make sure you only use the spell with the intention of utilizing the bonus movement speed. Now, this movement speed can be abused a little bit out of combat for getting around the map. Every time you base on Pantheon, you're going to get put on 5 stacks automatically. So you can use those 5 stacks for an empowered E and go from, the fountain back to top lane just a little bit faster. And you can use it to get around the map, but just keep in mind the E cooldown is quite long, especially early game. You don't want to be using it just for free. If you feel like a skirmish is going to break out, it can be better to hold it in that type of situation. Now, as for the damage portion of the spell, it can be important to note that the damage is extremely backloaded. The initial damage, the little burst as it's channeling, is quite small, but the burst at the very end when the channel is finished is going to be quite significant, so if you can hit that on your opponent during a fight or a trade, it's going to be definitely worth it. And the final tip with your E, because of the way it works, it only blocks damage from the direction that you're facing with it. A lot of people are going to be trying dash behind you, so it's really important to move your character in a way where they can't do that. But if they're playing a champion where they have a big dash or a flash, something like that, be prepared to match that. So for example, let's say a Camille is, queuing you down and the Q2 stacking up and you're 1 HP. Maybe she can execute with the Q2. She might be looking to Q2 flash behind you and execute you. So if you match her flash, predict that it's coming and flash backwards so that her flash is not going to really get behind you, you can still block that damage. Now, of course, it's probably only going to work against more experienced players who combo quite well with their flash, but it is something to keep in mind. If you can redirect your character with movement or with your flash to avoid them getting behind you, it's going to be very beneficial for you. Moving on to Pantheon's R. Now your R is going to drop a spear and then your character is going to follow afterwards, but if you can make that spear hit your opponent, it's going to slow them, making it a lot easier for you to reach them with W. So if you can try to predict the movement of your opponent before you drop in. Don't just drop your R on them straight away, predict where they're going to be going, but keep in mind they're not going to see the R as early as you, so try to predict their movement, but not too wide of a predict. Try to predict it a realistic way. Maybe if they have a dash, block their escape route, block the way to tower or down river, whatever way you think they're going to go. And try to get inside their head and predict the way they're going to be looking to escape. You can also use your R as a gank survive tool. Now keep in mind it will be cancelled by CC, so you do have to be careful of it, but let's say you're up against a Fiora and maybe Graves Jungle comes to gank you, you can W one of them and R straight away to try to get away from that gank, because while they're stunned they won't be able to damage you, so it's going to give you a bit more survivability to channel your R and get out of there. And the final piece of his ultimate is every single point in R that you get gives you an extra 10% bonus armor pin, which can make it so you don't really need to buy an item like Grudge or Mortal Reminder in that many games. Please don't buy Grudge, by the way. Mortal Reminder would be the best armor pin item in most situations, but only buy it in a game where you need the armor pin and you need the healing cut. In that case, it can be good to buy, but most of the time you don't really want to be building those items on Pantheon, as you get enough armor pin from his ulti anyway. Moving on to Pantheon's combos, and as most standard combo of all is chicken and rice, is you're going to be leading the combo with your W, but you do need to be starting it with 5 stacks of passive. So you'll start it with empowered W into auto tech into Q into auto tech into E. Now that should stack up your Conqueror or your PTA, basically instantly get all of your spells and damage done. You're going to be disengaging this trade with your E, or maybe even chasing them down depending on their HP threshold. Moving on to your quick combo. Now this combo can be done a lot faster and not give them much time to react after your stun wears out, but it is going to have less sustained damage overall than the original combo. So what you want to be doing, if you're on 3 or 4 stacks, you can be leading with W into auto attack into Q into E. Now you can get all this damage done before your stun wears out and before you can flash away or renect an ulti, whatever champion you're versing, and they won't have much time to react to it before you get your damage done. Now, although those are your two most standard combos and the ones you're going to be using most often, there is a combo that is a lot stronger than them. The problem with it is it can be extremely hard to pull off in a real game. What you're going to be doing is leading with auto attack when you're already on 5 stacks of passive and cancelling that auto attack animation with your W, just like we talked about before. Give you the extra stack of passive and cancel your W empowered auto attack with your E. Now, if you can do this very smoothly, you're going to get 5 stacks of passive instantly. You're going to start with 5 stacks and instantly get it for your Q, get all your damage done really quickly while they're stunned by the W, and they have no time to react. This will stack your Conqueror very quickly, or even PTA if you've got that, and you're going to be maximizing your damage output. The problem with it, you do have to start the combo in auto attack range with all your spells up, but also just comboing in general in a real game versus champions that are hitting you back can be quite difficult, so you definitely need to practice this in practice tool before you try it in a real game. But if you can pull this off, of course, it's going to be the strongest combo, especially in an all-in situation. Next up, we're going to be covering the matchups, and something you may notice right away is there's not a single champion in the hard section of the tier list. Now, don't get me wrong, there are some matchups that you will struggle with and can be quite difficult, but in terms of a hard matchup for me is something that is very hard to play unless there's a skill gap. It's very hard to survive or go even unless you're vastly better than your opponent. So, for example, in the easy matchup section, if you try to play GP versus Pantheon or Yasuo versus Pantheon, you're going to get completely obliterated unless there is a skill gap. Now, in my opinion, that is a hard matchup. There's not much room for you to outplay if your opponent is competent, or even Gangplank vs Rumble, another one Jax versus Kennen. If they're really good, or if they're good at their champion, if they can play their champion to a good level, and you don't have a skill gap, you're going to really struggle. But for example, if you play Pantheon versus Gragas and you're even skill, or versus an Ornn or a Malphite, it's still going to be in their favor, don't get me wrong, but it's not going to be so hard that you don't really have any options to outplay them individually. Now, before we begin, a quick reminder, this is a tier list for all elo brackets, so there is going to be some variation depending on which elo bracket you're in. For example, in Challenger, if you verse an insane Cassiopeia or a Gragas or a Skarner player, the matchup would actually be quite hard. Or even if you're in below gold and you verse a Garen, the matchup might be slightly favored for him because he has the ease of execution. It does depend on your elo bracket, but most of the time it should be pretty accurate, and worst case maybe 1 or 2 bracket difference. We'll start it off with the opponent favored matchups, and some of you'll notice the majority of these champions are actually going to be either tanks or neutralizers. It's very hard for Pantheon to gain a significant advantage against champions, and most of them actually outscale you. So even a champion like Tryndamere, for example, if he takes Grasp, your second win in Doran Shield, he can regen a lot of your poke, he can look for all-in windows later on, and the matchup can just be very annoying. Anytime you Q him, he'll just Q back, and try to regen the majority of your poke and outscale you later on. And same for other champs like Gragas or Ornn. They're a bit harder because they have more room to poke you down. They can look for short trades with their Q, they can disengage you. If you W onto Gragas, he can cancel with E, Ornn can buff a W through your stun, so he can look to retrade onto you if you engage onto him and just get you lower and lower and try to out-sustain your damage, because a lot of these champions are going to be Doran Shield second wind or just have an insane amount of regen like a champ like Gragas. There are some exceptions, champs like Cassiopeia, they can outrange you with Q and poke you down, and a lot of champions that can poke you down from range can be quite annoying for you because it's hard for you to reach them without getting kited and poked, and it's because you have no regen and you won't be taking TP that often. If you find yourself taking 1 or 2 bad trades and you're half HP versus full HP, you can find yourself stuck in the lane getting poked under tower by a Cassiopeia or a Karma, and it's going to be really hard for you to play out that sequence. So my advice for these matchups, and you can see in the laning section of the guide, is try to make it very volatile early on. Try to trade HP with them, get them low, because even though there are a lot of tanks here, a tier Skarner or even Doran Shield tank or a Doran's Ring Gragas aren't that tanky level 1, so you can look to really abuse them 1 to 3, get them low, get yourself low, either look to all in them at the early stage of the lane, or let the wave come back in, maybe you base early on, cheat a recall for an extra sword, and punish them on that bounce back. You really want to be getting an advantage in the early stage of this lane If you go even against Malphite and he gets level 6, bases gets Balmy Cinder, you're probably going to run out of your window. Punish him. Not saying you can't anymore if you take exceptionally good trades, you still can. It's just much harder once these tanks or neutralizers get their tanky items. Or even a champ like Cassiopeia, if she can get Catalyst on her first recall, base and TP back, you're really going to struggle. So you definitely want to be looking to make the lane volatile, get yourself both low, and either all in them 1 to 3 at the start of your push, or let the wave come back into you and all in them on that bounce back, try to get your jungler involved and gain yourself a lead before it gets to the point where the matchup's just unplayable. Moving on to the skill matchup section. Now, most of these matchups are definitely winnable and in your control. There will be some variance depending on your elo bracket, however. Let's say, imagine all the Jaces you're versing, 1000 LP challenger Jaces. Probably the matchup's going to be more so in their favor than if you're in another bracket, or if you're playing in silver, it'd be more so in your favor. So there is definitely some variance, but most of the time, if you can outplay your opponent by taking really smart trades, 100 to 0 trades in a lot of these matchups, it's going to be in your favor. So against Camille, for example, if you look to W her, every time she Ws, you can W auto Q and then click back, she actually doesn't have a window to auto attack you back and get her passive going. So if you trade like that consistently, dodge every single one of the outer ring of her W, and if she tries to E a wall onto you, you block that with E, you're going to keep getting her lower and lower until you can all in her. It can be very hard for her to win that matchup, but if she spaces extremely well with her W and clicks backwards while you're clicking forwards and manages to get you on the just outer ring of that W, she can actually look to get some trades. But generally, I would say if you both playing quite well, this should be in favor for you. But if Camille plays slightly better than you, you are going to have a tough time. And if she gets a kill in this lane, it's going to be very hard for you. Or if you don't get an advantage before she gets Triforce, again, it'll be quite tough. You want to be looking to punish her early and get yourself a lead. Now, other champions, for example, Vesperia, you want to be having good movement when you jump onto it and avoid her E. Now, the reason this matchup is harder than expected, even though you can bully her 1 to 3, is she'll get to the point where she can just jump onto you and bash you down, and she can disengage your E with her E. So it's kind of similar champs, I would say, in terms of having a key disengage tool in the trade. And if you're unfamiliar with versing Bria, she can catch you off guard, definitely. If you're very confident, you take 100 to 0 trades, stay high HP, and disengage her all in quite quickly, you should be fine in the majority of your situations. Now, champs like Aatrox, a lot of this is based on baiting spells. So champs like Aatrox, champs like Darius, or Mordekaiser especially, you really want to be playing to bait out their spells. Pretend to walk towards them for a W, pretend to go for a last hit when they're nearby, and bait out the Darius Q. Bait out the Aatrox Q and avoid it, and then look to close the gap. So if it's Darius or Aatrox, for example, you can W onto them when they Q, but versus Mordekaiser, you sort of want to bait out his Q, step backwards and avoid it, or jump onto his head, bash him down, and avoid his QE that's going to be coming out soon. You have to be very aware of their key spells and looking to either bait it and make them waste it and then all in them, or be very conscious of it when you're going for that all in and avoid it during the trade. Moving on to the Pantheon favored matchups. Now, a key element to the majority of these lanes is you really want to be forcing a lead between levels 1 and 5. A lot of them, for example, Renekton, champs like Aurelia, champs like Riven, when they get level 6, they're going to have a lot of all-in threat. So if you're completely even with them at that point, or even slightly behind, you're going to really struggle in that lane. However, the agency is on you. You're way stronger than these champions 1 to 5, especially level 1. You can look to bully them down. So really look to gain yourself an early game advantage so that by the time they get level 6, they're already behind. It's going to be very hard for them to trade onto you. So 100 to 0 trading is going to be the name of the game. A lot of these lanes, poke down the Renekton, the Aurelia, poke down the Olaf, don't let them retrade onto you, and then when they're low enough they can't really all in you, that's when you're going to be looking to all in them instead. So it really depends on the lane, but most of these champions, you want to be poking them down, getting them low, and then looking to all in them. But if you're up against a champ like TF, a range shop like that, or a Nara, try to make the matchup very volatile. Both of you low, because these champions have really bad all in. So generally just think, if the champion has good all-in, you want to be poking them down first, getting all that, the groundwork done, getting them to around 50-40% HP before you look for an all-in. But if they're a weak all-in champion, it's fine to trade HP and make the lane volatile, because your all-in is going to be stronger than theirs. Finishing off with the easy matchups. Now, most of these are going to be completely in your favor, and you won't even really need to do the groundwork. You don't need to poke them down first or anything like that. It's still better if you do, of course, but what are they going to really do if you just jump on their head and bash them down? They don't really have a lot of good all-in. Yasuo may be the only exception, so look to poke down Yasuo first, of course, but these champions will really struggle into you. You can poke them, you can win all-in. So you can take Ignite versus champs like Yasuo or Gangplank or Kayle and play for those early kills and snowball before they can scale up later on. Or you can look to take TP versus the Sion or the Shyvana or the Singe and look to attack the rest of their team instead. So one more thing I want to say before we move on from the matchup section is Pantheon actually has a ton of variance from how he plays his lanes. So what I recommend you do is watch VODs of the matchups you're unfamiliar with, take notes when you play the matchup, and really start to understand the conditions for winning each matchup. Because unlike other champions, their winning condition is going to be vastly different depending on what you're versing. There's always going to be variance, regardless of what champ you play, of course, but in my opinion, Pantheon has a bit more variance in that regard. For example, playing a champion like Darius, most of the time, you're going to be wanting to crash your wave, let it come back and all in them with your Ghost and Flash and run them down and play for extended trades. That's going to be consistent in a lot of your matchups. Or even a champ like Aatrox, most of the time you're going to be getting pushed in and play really aggressive at the start of your bounce back when you tick level 4. A lot of these champions have patterns that you can fall into, and Pantheon does as well, of course. He just has more patterns that you have to learn. Because there's a big difference between how you play versus a Gragas or how you play versus a Darius, as you've seen in the laning section. You really need to learn the conditions for each matchup, and by studying the game, or from playing the matchup and writing down notes of how it went and what you want to be trying next time, and really start to figure out how you're going to be winning these matchups, because it's very important on Pantheon that you get ahead in the early game. Next up, we're going to be going through the mid game, and before I show you some examples from recent solo queue games of mine, I want to quickly talk you through the general strategy for mid game on Pantheon, because it's going to be pretty similar in the majority of your games. So on this graphic here, we have bot lane mid. This is the mid game, mid lane is the top, you're playing bot, opposite side of Baron, for example, and the jungler's just on Grump, right? Doesn't really matter what they're doing, most of the time they're going to be looking to attack mid or top, or even you, but the general strategy for you on Pantheon is going to be to remove the side wave and push your opponent under tower, and then look for a global play with your ulti. So I'll show a few examples. Let's say in this one, your bot lane lost lane, and this tower is still standing. This first tier 1 is still up, and it's pretty hard for you to break it. Maybe you won your lane up against say Renekton, he's 0-2, and he's just clearing the wave under tower. You're not really going to be able to make much progress there. So what you want to do is push the wave all the way under tower, make sure he's stuck here, so I'll move him so it looks a bit nicer. He's stuck under tower, and then you're going to be looking to move up with your ulti. So it's important to note, there are going to be specific bushes where you want to be pinking so that they can't see you fog up, because generally if you're playing a champ, let's say you're playing Camille, you'll be playing a similar strategy, push this Renekton here and try to move up for a roam. They're going to see you coming. Most of the time they're going to see you coming, so you need to pick up Sweeper and stuff like that, sweep your way in. But on Pantheon, you can still go Sweeper, don't get me wrong, you don't really need it, you just need to have good ping placement. If you have a pink ward here, so I'll place a ward in this bush, then it's very easy for you to push your top under tower and run your way up. You only really need to stand in this bush to ulti to mid. So if there's a play, you go, of course, commit with your ulti, get a couple kills. And if not, let's say you're looking mid and your bot lane's recalling and nothing's happening, you just go back to side, it's only about 10 steps, clear the next wave as high up as you can, and then repeat the process. Every single wave you push, you keep your opponent stuck there, and then you look to fog up, but because Pantheon is so powerful, with his ulti, you only have to walk a couple steps and then you can look to ulti mid. So really impactful champion, and also if you base for an item, you also have the option to run top out of base and ulti here. If these guys are playing crazy, maybe it's Silas versus Akali, Faker versus Chovy up here, playing like psychos, of course you can look to base and run straight top and try to get involved there, but most of the time, your mid game is going to be spent keeping your lane opponent stuck under this tower and looking to fog up to mid. Now, let's say the tier 1 is broken, it's going to be very similar. You push your opponent all the way onto tier 2, and then you look to make the same play. So in that case, you can look to either pink the tri-bush, and this is the case where a sweep would be more important. You want to make sure you sweep this bush here, and you can either fog up through these two bushes here, depending on how safe you feel. Maybe their jungler is a 7-0 Evelyn, you don't feel that safe, but if the jungler is not a concern for you, or if you have seen them on the map somewhere, you can just look to pink this bush as well, my favorite bush for mid game, and then you just one-shot wave, go stand in this bush, and the bot lane can't play the game without in fear of them being ulted. It's going to be the same on the opposite side of the map as well, so I'll just, without redoing everything, I'll just put the top laners up here, and get rid of the mids. It'll be the exact same thing. You're going to be looking to push your opponent under tower here, and then look to fog and attack mid as much as you can. You never win the game, not never, you very rarely win the game through side lane on Pantheon. You're not playing Fiora, you're not playing Gwen, not playing Trundle. You're not going to push, break this tier 2, break this tier 3, and win the game like that. You're going to push the wave to make your opponent react, especially if they're playing a strong team fighter, like Malphite or Ornn or something. You definitely want to keep them stuck under this tower, and then you want to look to ulti mid. But even if they're not playing a strong team fighter, if they're the one playing Yorick or Trundle, you still want to get the wave in first, because if the wave is, let's say for example, you're just coming out of base and you ulti mid, but the top wave is up here with the top laner, of course he's going to break the tier 2 and get a huge influx of gold, which he can use to get prio against you in the next sequence. So make sure you keep your opponent stuck under tower, regardless of what they're playing, so that if they're a strong team fighter, they can't be a part of the fight, or if they're a strong side laner, they can't get anything in return when you're making your play mid. So now, after watching me draw on the screen for 5 minutes, you can see some examples of the exact concepts we were just talking about. Where in this game, I'm playing up against a Fiora. Even though she sucks in team fighting, especially she's very far behind this game, if I were to have just made a play mid, or attack the Herald with my ulti, and let her push bot, she might even get the tier 2 if the fight goes on for long enough, and find a way back into the game. I'm pushing in bot, I'm not here to kill Fiora, but if she touches my wave, I'm going to bash her up, beat her down like this, it's fine, but my main goal here is to get the wave under tower, and make her respond to me, keep her stuck under this bot tier 2, and then I'm going to fog up for a play. Now it's important to note if there was no play here, if my bot lane was in base or something, I'll just go back bot and get the same wave, but of course it's solo queue, it's always going to be action packed, you're not playing a competitive game, so there's a lot of action and I ulti up here. There's no way for Fiora to join this fight, unless she TPs in, but even if she TPs in after catching the bot wave, it's going to be too late. The fight's and look, she's even TPing here right now. The fight is already determined by the time that she hits the TP button and arrives, where even if she did make it to this fight a little bit sooner, I still would have got the double kill, would have taken out the majority of her team, so it would have been really hard for her to be the difference maker in this fight. So playing in this way not only removes her option of attacking inside, it made her feel pressured to actually TP in and help her team, when that's not what a champion excels at. If she was playing a strong team fighting champ, let's say she's playing Malphite, right? One of the strongest team fighting champs in top lane. Even if she TPs in late after I've already ultied, already stunned her 80 carry, killed, maybe even got a double kill, even if he's playing Malphite, he won't be able to be the biggest difference maker in that fight because he's going to be arriving after all of his primary carries are already eliminated. Now, one thing I want to note, if there's no urgent side wave, you don't always have to default on going there as soon as possible. You don't have to really tunnel vision on this concept and think I have to get my side wave in before I make a play. You should always be looking for a play coming out on base. So you shouldn't just run straight down to top right now, keep Riven pinned and then make the play if there's a lot of action happening. So here you can see I'm running straight down mid and I'm flexible. I can ulti back top if I need to. If there's a top play, mid play, bot play, I'm ready for any type of situation. And here, we're looking to push the wave. I'm thinking about going mid, but it's just a karma. Not that interested. As you can see, I'm always looking, always hovering my ulti and looking for a play. So a little bit late here. Unlucky, I just stopped looking as Azir flew in, but I still got the play off in the end. We killed their mid. I burned support's flash, I'm pretty sure. So I'm always looking for this play, even though here, Riven might get the tier 1, might get a bit of farm. It's important to note that it's fine to give tier 1 towers up for a significant play. So yeah, we killed mid, we burned support's flash, and we broke mid tower. That's worth a tier 1. Definitely, but I wouldn't really give a tier 2 tower for this type of situation. So because my tier 1 was up, as I'm coming out on base, I feel a lot less inclined to need to go side straight away. So it is going to depend on the game state and the champ you're playing up against. This guy's a 0-6 Riven, so to be honest, even if I gave him tier 2, it wouldn't matter. So this is a bad example for that. But here I'm fine to give my tier 1 for this type of mid play, but the general concept I want you to keep in mind is if your side wave is not super urgent and there's not a trundle knocking on your door, you should always be looking for a play coming out on base, so make sure it's a quick play and go back to side as soon as you can after you've ulted in and been the difference maker in that skirmish. For our next topic, we're going to be covering team fighting. Now, before we dive into it, it's important to note that in an ideal world on Pantheon, you're not fighting a straight up 5v5, even numbered fight. You want to use your lane advantage that you should be gaining to create side lane pressure and be ulting in. Exactly what we talked about in the mid-game section. You want every fight or skirmish to be in your favor, right? So you want to be creating either a 5v4 team fight or, ulting into a skirmish and being the difference maker there and trying to make sure there isn't some sort of advantage because your champion is not objectively super powerful in team fighting compared to most tanks, right? You're still strong, especially in a game where you're ahead, don't get me wrong, but you're going to be weaker in an even state game than like an Aatrox or, even an Ornn or a Cassante, something like that. You want to be using your strength and your lane advantage to create a numbers advantage skirmish or a team fight. Now, if you do have to team fight, or even if you're just skirmishing and you do have the numbers advantage, these concepts are going to help you a lot. And the first one is going to be, you want to be weaving in and out of the fight and playing around your cooldowns. So I've got an example here. Initially, I was thinking of basing because Sion was top, but he TP'd in, so I stayed. And the way I play this fight is really, hard following that concept. So Sion goes in with ulti, and here, I choose to go for Cast. Now, the 80 carries are in front of me, but for starters, Draven can cancel Pantheon W with Z. It's really important not to get your stun cancelled, of course, and Cassidy is a much bigger threat at this point in the game. So I buffer my W onto his R, get the stun down, and we're able to blow him up before he can really impact this fight. Now, my spells are on cooldown, I use my E, to block these Draven crits, block his damage, but you'll notice even though I do want to be weaving in and out of the fight and going back in on my next set of cooldowns, because your E is so powerful, you can block all incoming damage from that direction. I don't want to be clicking completely back, so you can see I'm running towards them, and that is creating space for my team. Because I'm clicking towards them, Draven doesn't want to get stunned. Karma doesn't want to get stunned, of course. They're going to be clicking back. So Draven and Karma were clicking back when I was Eing towards them, and now I'm clicking back as my E expires. So they have no room to do free damage onto me or to re-engage onto me, and that's going to depend on the champs you're versing. If you verse champs with more engage and more threat, maybe you do need to click completely back, but it's important to note not just to tunnel on, alright, I use my stun, I'm going to run away completely with E, if you can block a lot of that damage and create space for your team. So now again, stun onto Draven, burn his flash, and now I'm clicking back. And this was a bit of a waste here. I'm pretty sure I stunned the Scion passive. But again, re-engage with my next E, create space for my team, and we're able to easily win this fight. So I have another example here from that exact same game, a different team fight, and the concept we're going to be covering is holding your spells. Because the biggest mistake I see top laners make time and time again is they just blow their spells on the first target they can. So especially when you're playing a champion that has CC. So if you're playing a champ like Renekton or Jax or Camille, or in this case of course Pantheon, you don't want to be using your CC at a bad time. Because here in this example, this Scion, after I bash his crab a little bit, is right in front of my face. It could be very tempting for me to stun him, get to later flick him, and get our damage down onto the Scion. But it's not worth it in this situation. It's better for me to hold on to my spell for a better opportunity. So I just auto-attack this guy, hold on to my spells, and now that Xin Zhao was, thought he was in that bush, I can stun him and go for the one-shot. And now again, my next W is back up. Initially here, I go for a little stun onto Draven, hoping he went that way. And even now, the Scion is queuing up my Graves. He's sitting here taking damage. It could be very tempting for me to stun this guy, but I'm just auto-attacking him, holding my stun, holding my major spells, and now the Kassadin shows up, the Draven's not in range, but he's nearby. It's very hard for these two champions, their main carries, to play the game because I held on to my W. So as you can see, if my stun was down, maybe Kassadin would be more inclined to ulti and get some damage down, make a play, but because he sees my W's up this whole time, him and Draven cannot play, and now I have my W for a bit of time, gone to Draven with the Talia flick, and we're able to one-shot him. So really good understanding here from me to pat myself on the back, but basically it's really important for you to know that holding your spell until a better opportunity presents itself is almost always going to be better. Don't just stun, the 2-item Renekton or the Scion or the Ornn that's in front of your face. Hold on to it and wait for a better opportunity, especially if your team is already doing DPS to their front line. You want to be holding your spell. So, I'll go back to it here. My Graves, my Talia, everyone's already hitting this Scion. He's stunning him. All it does is, give me a bit of dopamine and feel good. It doesn't really help contribute to this fight as much as me holding my spell for a better opportunity would. I have another quick example here of holding onto your spells until the right time. So as you can see, Norlis face checks me, auto attack Q, I'm holding onto my W. Now granted, if I had God Vision, I would have stunned him because I saw where everyone is, but in this game, all I saw was Norlis. It's better for me to hold my W. Now here again, Norlis is right next to me, I hold onto my W, I just kill him with auto attacks and Qs, and now I can hold my W to a better time. Now I choose to commit W onto this Rumble instead of onto the Samira. First of all, he's level 13 versus level 10, he was really strong in this game, but he's a primary target, and also my team can follow me up. So if I went on Samira, of course the Graves could follow me up. He was playing quite poorly this game though, he didn't have that much damage. Rumble's more of a prior target. I mainly want to be playing in a way where my team can follow up my damage and my CC. Because Pantheon, even though you have a lot of strong early game damage, and I'm not saying you scale terribly, you're not really going to be 100 to 0ing people in a team fight from full HP. That's not really going to be realistic unless you're 12-0 or something like that. So in this game, I choose to stun the Rumble next to my carries. They're able to follow me up. They're able to kill him, I'm able to live actually, and we are able to win the skirmish. So if I were to have committed my W onto the Nautilus and not have it for the Rumble, maybe they would have gone away, or maybe if I W the Samira, when my real backline couldn't follow me up, maybe we wouldn't have been able to kill the Rumble. So it's really important for you to hold on to your spells until the right opportunity presents itself, because even if it doesn't, even if the Rumble or the Samira didn't go anywhere near me, so I had my W up, right? We would have just killed the Nautilus anyway. It still would have been a great situation, but there's no risk involved of me wasting my W on a tank and the enemy carries being able to have their way with my team. I'll wrap up the team fighting section there, and you may be thinking it does sound pretty straightforward, and that's just because it is. Team fighting on Pantheon is probably one of the easiest parts of the champion, as long as you follow those two concepts. Not the best team fighter, but his kit is so simple in a team fight setting, or as long as you're playing around your cooldowns, weaving in and out of the fight, not just trying to stick down 100 to 0 someone, bash them down, like you're playing a Trundle or an Olaf or something, you're going to have a lot of success, especially if you're exceptionally good at holding spells. A lot about team fighting on Pantheon It's just being good at team fighting concepts in general, not really specific to Pantheon. So if you can follow these two main rules, weaving in and out of the fight, playing around your spells, holding on to them until the right opportunity it presents itself, you're going to have a lot of success in any skirmish or team fight where you find yourself in. Next up, we're going to be covering Pantheon's identity and the mindset you should have when playing this champion. And in my opinion, one of the most fundamental parts of this champion's identity, just how powerful you are in the laning phase and the early game in general. You should not play this champion even if you're learning him to go even or slightly ahead or slightly behind. You need to play this champion with a killer instinct. You need to be playing it very explosive, trying to blow open the game, if it dominate your lane opponent. If he's playing a bruiser, Fiora, Jax, champs like that, you really want to be getting them behind. Or even if they're playing a scaling champ, you're going to get them behind. But if you're playing against a champ that's a neutralizer or a tank, a champion that doesn't really matter that much if they're behind, like an Ornn or a Volibear or something like that, you can still play for individual advantage, don't get me wrong, but you should be more inclined to play to attack the rest of the map. Or even if you are versing a champion you want to get behind, maybe you're versus a champion like Aatrox, you want to get him behind, but he's playing extremely safe, sitting under his tower, taking short trades, and really not letting you poke him down, then use your pro to attack the rest of the map. Because something that's super underrated about Pantheon is just how hard it is for the enemy mid laner to play the game. Because most top laners, it is pretty difficult to roam mid, but even if you do, there is a big wind-up. It takes you a long time to get there, and it takes you a long time to get back, so you will lose a bit, like quite a lot. But if you play Pantheon, you can just one-shot your wave, fog down the river to the top bush, and look to ulti mid, and it's really hard for the enemy mid laner to play aggressive, especially if they're playing a volatile champion. So if the enemy mid laner, if you see in champ select or loading screen, they're playing champ like Sylas or Yasuo, Kiana, anything like that, you should be really switched on and looking to be as impactful as possible in that mid lane, because you can really change the outcome of the matchup with just one or two good ultis, and every time your ulti's up, if you're fogging down and looking mid, it can be very hard for them to, attack the rest of the map, to roam, to get solo kills in their lane, especially if they're playing strong melee champions or assassins. However, if the mid matchup is, it's a Zia versus Ori, something boring, that doesn't mean you can't look, but if they're playing really safe under tower, there will be more options. You can attack the enemy jungle in his jungle, you can attack dragon, but I would be careful with attacking bot. I'd only attack bot in a situation where you know it's going to be free, because let's say you base, you kill a Jax, he TP's back, you base and run bot, and ulti, Jax is probably going to get 2 or 3 plates, 2 or 3 waves advantage over you, and then he's going to beat you in side lane for the rest of the game. So you should only be ulting bot when your opponent is very far behind or playing a champion where resources don't matter that much. For example, if you ulti bot and the enemy Sion or the enemy Tahm Kench or something gets a plate or 2 in a couple waves, it won't matter as much as a strong side lane champion like a Jax. Or if the bot lane matchup is just make or break, gonna change the game. So if they're playing a champ like Kalista versus Draven, something extremely volatile, or maybe you can just dive bot and instantly double kill the hyperscaling, Zeri Lulu, something like that. It can be worth what you're giving up on the other side. Just keep in mind the game, especially the mid to late, will be less in your control if you get far behind your lane opponent. So be very careful with ulting bot, but keep in mind ulti mid is very free. You just one-shot your wave, fog down, ulti mid, run straight back to top, and you'll lose very little. So that's a play you should be constantly looking for in almost every single game you play. Now, because your champion is so powerful in skirmish situations or numbers advantage team fights, you need to start taking some responsibility and making these conditions happen. You don't just want to be a passenger on your team when you play this champ. Sit on the back of the bus and hope that plays go well. You need to be forcing plays, trying to get your jungler to play around grubs when you're strong, try to make mid play more volatile when you're looking, make your team play for dragon on a timer when you can ulti down. Try to be more involved in the game, because you have more agency in this game. You can be more impactful as long as, there's some volatile situations happening nearby and you're ready for it, but you need to be the one taking more responsibility and making that happen. You don't just want to chill in your game, get one solo kill in your lane, get a bit of a 20 CS gap, something like that, and then just hope the rest of your team does well. You need to be trying to explode the game, and you're not going to learn that skill unless you practice it, try to make plays happen, and push yourself out of your comfort zone, where if you play another champion, say Fiora or a champ like Trundle, you don't need to be as involved in the team aspect because you can win more as an individual player. Now, even though Pantheon is kind of a selfish pick, he's not really a tank or a frontline, anything like that, you still want to get your team involved and force as many skirmishes and fights as you can, because he really excels in those types of conditions. Now, the last point I'll say on this topic is make sure, even though you are powerful in lane, and you might be able to get an advantage over your lane opponent, don't tunnel vision too hard on just bullying the same guy over and over. If you've already won your lane, and the enemy Jax or the enemy Fiora or Riven, anything like that, is already 0-3, 0-4, don't just run down bot in the mid game, try to kill him, try to break bot tier 2, eat Krugs, and play really selfishly like that. You want to be sharing your strength around the rest of the map. Pantheon is not a champion that you're going to win the game through side laning. You might be strong in side lane, you can get pressure and you can get kills, especially if you get a lead in lane, but don't tunnel vision on that being your win condition. Push inside and look to ulti the rest of the map. Because not only if you tunnel vision on that, are you not going to be able to close the game, it's very rare Pantheon can hit tower in front of somebody and split push a bot and hit, that's not really going to happen, but you're putting yourself at risk at you being the one getting ganked by the enemy jungler. If you get killed by top jungle inside, you're not going to be able to share your strength around to the rest of the map. Where if you just one-shot the wave and fog up and attack the rest of the team, you want to be the one ganking them. You don't want to be the one getting ganked inside, of course. So you want to be looking to spread your strength around the rest of the map as much as you can, and not tunnel visioning on side laning being your win condition. Next up, we're going to be doing a full game review where I talk you through my thought process throughout this entire game. Now in this matchup, please ignore that first Q, I'm playing up against a Renekton. Now it's important for me to take short trades and get them lower and lower before I look for any type of meaningful all-in. However, in this game, you'll notice I took Conqueror, and I'm looking to keep it stacked up as much as I can, so now I'm 6 out of 12, where normally you'd want to be just spacing this guy and playing with Qs. If you took the PTA page, I want to keep my Conqueror going. So I actually walk up and auto-attack him here. I trade a bit of HP here, so that I can keep my Conqueror. As you can see, I'm 12 stacks to his 4, so there's nothing he can really do about this type of trade. Now I can completely zone him from the wave because I've taken a great trade and kept my Conqueror up. It's really hard for him to farm from this point. So I'll speed up a little bit because at this point he just sort of sits back here and does nothing. Not really much he can do. If he walks up to this wave, I'm of course going to jump on his head with W and get a really significant trade. Now if you do win the early trades, again, somebody that all of a sudden goes, oh shit, Pantheon's quite strong and sits far back like this guy, it's good to hold your wave in the center of the lane. Don't just needlessly bash it down and chuck Qs onto it for no reason. Keep the wave here and keep him zoned from farm as much as you can, and then crash the biggest wave possible and use that free time you've created from the crash to move around. I should have queued that cannon there. It's okay. I'm just looking to get this wave in under tower and look to move around the map because this guy's playing way too safe for me to solo kill him. I'm just going to be looking to poke him down, get this wave in, and then look to attack the rest of his team. Now, as you'll notice, Fiddlesticks walked past me there, so as soon as I get this wave in, I'm going to be looking to influence the jungle. So if you're playing Pantheon and you see a farming jungler, you know, a Fiddlesticks, a Lilia, or a Hecarim, anything like that, you should be more inclined to attack them in their jungle. Because there's a big difference between ruining the farming time or even killing a farming jungler and going in and having to fight, you know, a level 3 Lee Sin or Rek'Sai or something like that. It's probably not going to go as well for you. So here I go on the fiddle, try to burst him down, he greets for the Gromp, he actually gets it, and I do make a mistake here. I try to predict Q flash with no vision, where I should have held onto my Q, just flashed over, went for the Q flash, but I'm still able to take him out, and even though Renekton comes and gets the kill, he did have to drop a bit of farm, I'm pretty sure, from the top wave, and it is going to be worth it overall. So not the best situation for me. If I could have hit my Q there and not needed to take 2 tower shots, it would have been worth. But as you can see, I'm looking to be as impactful as possible in this early game, especially in this type of game with a Graves, Yasuo, mid jungle, you know, triple AD topside. Not the best. We need to be snowballing this game before it gets to the point where, you know, our mid jungle just falling off. I don't want to rely on them to carry this game. I want to be the one setting the pace. So we kill Fiddlesticks, and we're looking to catch this wave under tower, and I'm going to be looking to slow push this as well. You want to be building as big waves as you can on Pantheon. Not only is it going to give you more time to fight them in, you know, closer to your section of the lane, but also the bigger wave you create, the bigger timer you'll make for yourself that you can use to run around the map and attack the rest of his team. So you got the red buff that I got from Fiddle, and because he's sitting really far back, I went for the far Q. So normally you do just want to be taking the short Q trades because the cooldown will be a lot lower, but when you're versing people that are just playing like this, really far back, respecting you, you can go for the long ones and go for, you know, that damage is going to be better than no damage, especially if they're not giving you the short Q trade. So as you can see, I blocked his W with my E, I predicted that it was coming, so it's something you can look to do in a lot of matchups. If you feel like the, you know, Camille's about to E onto you, you can E, Renekton W, stuff like that. If you can block the majority of their major spells with your E, it's going to make the trade a lot better for you. So now there's low HP, I'm going to be going for a dive, so I'll slow it down a little bit here. Now, because he's low HP, I want to be bursting this guy before he can flash and dodge any type of my spell. So here I poke him down with Q, and he's level 6 as well. If I jump onto this guy with Empowered W, he's going to have a brief window where he can ulti or flash ult, something like that, and make it really hard for me to one-shot him. So as you'll notice, I'm not looking to rush into this. I pop him down with the Empowered Q, and now I'm going to be looking to dive him without 5 stacks. I'm going to chill here on 4 stacks. I'm not going to hit an extra minion, and now I commit the all-in. W for my 5th stack, insta Q. I even get a cheeky auto in there, just for a style point, and I'm able to one-shot this guy. So if you go with Empowered W, there is that risk, especially if they have the Tenacity rune, or Merc Treads or something like that, where they can flash out of your upcoming Q. So it is better to lead with a non-empowered W if you're looking to one-shot somebody from low HP, especially in a tower dive. So for our next sequence, I'm coming back top, and Renekton's desperately trying to crash his wave under tower so that I can't freeze and punish him. You know exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to block him from that condition. I'm going to pull this wave out from under tower and make it so he has to walk up near my tower to get the farm, so I can easily trade onto him, poke him down lower and lower, because I don't want to crash a wave under his tower when he's full HP. He's going to be able to easily catch all that farm. There's going to be no threat of me punishing him, so as you can see, he was probably pinging for help. He called up the bard to get the wave in for him. So if you play quite well on the early game as Pantheon, not only is your 1v1 advantage going to be possibly grown, but you can also waste the time of the enemy jungler and the support trying to bail out the top of a bad situation. Because something that a lot of top laners underrate is wasting the jungler's time. It's actually really bad for the game state for a jungler to come top just to bail out a Renekton of a bad situation. Junglers want to be attacking lanes and growing advantages, because if my jungler's doing that and their jungler's wasting time like this Fiddlesticks, trying to pressure me, but I'm respecting his roam and the bard roam, that's only going to give my team a lot of space on the map to make their own plays. As you can see, he goes for a trade onto me, I block it with E. A lot of these matchups you're going to get the feel for when they're going to be using their main spell, like a Garen Q, Renekton W, stuff like that, and if you can block that with your E, then the trade is going to be exceptionally good for you. So now I'm choosing to hard push this wave, I don't have time to slow push it, and I want to be pressuring him while he's low HP. Now, I'm going to be looking for a dive here. There are a lot of games where I'd look for mid on this timer, even though Renekton is low, because I've already gained an advantage over this Renekton. However, the reason I'm not going mid, it's quite obvious actually, my Yasuo's not even in lane. So it's quite not volatile at all, it's quite passive lane state. I don't know if Orianna's going to stay in greed or anything like that. It's better for me to play to punish this Renekton. Now, of course, he has ulti and flash still, so I do have to play it quite well. Now, I'll slow it down. Something you'll notice I do here is I lead from far away, because if I walk towards this guy, I guarantee he's going to preemptively ulti. He's going to think I'm going to stun him, again, just like last time, and pop his ulti so that he doesn't get one shot. So what I do instead, flash W straight away from max range, or almost max range, so that he doesn't have time to ulti or flash in reaction to it. I WQE, really quick combo, burst him down before he has a chance to ulti, and I'm able to pick up the kill. So something to keep in mind as well, because I dropped my ignite during that kill. It probably wasn't needed, or definitely wasn't needed, but it's always good to ignite during an all-in, especially when you have Conqueror, because it also gives you 2 stacks of Conqueror, so it stacks up your Conqueror a bit faster, gives you that extra damage. But as you can see, when you're looking to dive people on Pantheon, try to be a lot more creative with it. The first one I dived without my W stacked, so that I had enough time to burst him down before the stun wore off. This time I flash from max range W. I'm sort of mixing up my pattern to burst this guy from under tower and making it really hard for him to play against me. Heading on to our next sequence, and you'll notice first thing that I'm not just running straight down top. I have no interest anymore at bullying the 0-2 Renekton. I'll do it if it's the only option in the game, but I really want to be sharing my strength around the map, just like we've been talking about pretty much this entire video. So I'm looking to run straight down here. Originally, I was going more deeper towards mid so that I could wear Blitzcrankers if a fight broke out, ulti mid if they play aggressive, but because Orianna didn't show mid at all, I was originally going back top, but as second she shows mid, you can see I pop ulti instantly. It's really hard for the enemy mid laner to play aggressive versus Pantheon, and this guy went for a Q trade onto Yasuo, he overextended, so I instantly killed him, of course. So it's really important for you to have high intensity for attacking the rest of the map, especially when you've already gained an advantage in your lane. So now, I'm looking to be a part of the skirmish as well. Like we talked about, Pantheon excels in early skirmishes, so even though there's supporters here, and mine's just AFK bot, I'm not worried at all because I've already gained a lead in my lane from having a good laning phase, and I'm looking to fight. So I go on to Renekton, look to burst him down. In hindsight, maybe I could have held stun for Fiddle there, it's hard to say, but I'd say Renekton is more of their primary damage as long as we can space out Fiddle ulti. We're able to kill Fiddle, down Renekton as well, and even though their support was here, of course I had to kill their mid, so it's a bit of an even-numbered fight, but you can see how powerful I am in the skirmish. It wasn't even close. Even if my Graves got one shot, I still would have been able to carry that one. So now after that grub fight, all I did was push in base, and you'll notice I am running straight top, and the reason for that, my ulti is on cooldown. So you really want to be playing around your ulti cooldown, deploying more for the team when it's up, and going straight back top if it's not, because you want to be getting your wave in as fast as possible, so that when your ulti is actually back up, then you can look to make a play. Now, because I've already gained a significant advantage against this Renekton, I literally have zero interest in poking him and punching him even further. You'll notice I'm not slow pushing the wave, like I was in the early points of the lane. I'm just one-shotting it as fast as I can so that I can be more impactful. And look how shallow I am in the river. I just took about 3 or 4 steps from my lane and I can already ulti mid. The champion is so powerful. at impacting the game early game, and I'm able to come down here, kill their mid laner, and maybe even get another kill here. Can't really remember. Burn the Bard Flash, chunk the Twitch. You can see really impactful champion as long as you are looking for these options. I think a lot of players make the mistake of just keep bullying their lane opponent until they break the tower, but that doesn't really have to be the case on Pantheon. Get your lead and bring it around to the map as much as possible, abuse your ulti every time it's up, and make it so the enemy mid laner can't play the game. So now for our next sequence, I'm going to be deploying straight bot because the mid game has officially begun. My bot lane is mid, my mid lane is top, and I want to be deploying to the opposite side of the next objective, and the next objective spawning is going to be the Rift Herald. So I want to be going bot and creating as much pressure as possible before my ulti comes back off cooldown. I'm going to be burning her flash chunk unit, of course. If she's set back, I'll just hit the wave, and now I want to be pushing out the wave as fast as I can before my ulti comes back up. I'll speed up a little bit. My ulti is on cooldown now. As you can see, just one-shotting the wave and waiting for my ulti. As soon as my ulti's up, I'm going to be watching mid like a hawk. If Twitch ever plays aggressive, tries to shoot my Aurelion Soul, tries to hit mid tower, anything like that, you can see my camera's panning up. I'm going to kill it, but Graves chooses to gank for me instead, so I try to help him out. Now, I do make a mistake here. I really regret using my flash on this guy. You'll see shortly. Definitely not worth it. He didn't have the Seraph's upgrade before I went for this. I didn't double check, so quite unlucky there. But not worth my flash anyway. He's just a normal kill, 300 gold, maybe even a bit less. And I'm a 1k shutdown. My flash is much more valuable than his, so be a lot more careful than I was in this example with your Pantheon flash. Try to use it for a more prior target, especially in more of a teamfight skirmish situation. So I keep around a stuck under tower, I choose the base, and I run straight down mid. Now I'm fine to use my E there for the movement speed, because ulti will give you your 5 stacks anyway, and as you can see my ulti is primed and ready to go. If Twitch showed up out of stealth, I would have pulled the trigger straight away, but this guy's actually playing quite well. He knows I'm constantly looking, he's respecting, but that's another side bonus of Pantheon. It's really hard for the enemy bot lane and the mid game to get mid pro and start controlling the map and getting vision down if you're constantly threatening them with your ulti. But instead, because he's respecting, I'm being more flexible. I'm using my ulti to attack side instead, but you're always going to have options to do so. So I could have attacked Renekton top maybe, but again, 1-4 Renekton, whatever his score is at this point, not interested at all. I'd rather shut down their control mage from farming and make it hard for him to play the game. So I'm just blocking his escape here from going left and let my team catch him out. Now I'm going to be pushing in the wave and just looking to do the same thing all over again. I'll skip through a little bit. As you can see, push in the wave and looking to move into the jungle, looking for plays. Even though I don't have ulti, Pantheon's just not a champion where you want to be bashing a bot tier 2 all day. You take it pretty slowly. But also, it's just more impactful for you to try to be forcing skirmishes and plays. Even if your ulti's on cooldown, there are still going to be options for you depending on the game. So you can see they're squaring up, reacting to me. I've created pressure, and we're able to get the skirmish I was just talking about. So don't rely on your ulti. It's not as black and white as my ulti's down. All I'm doing is side laning. My ulti's up, I'm looking. There are going to be times where you could be more creative. Just make sure that your default is not hitting the side tower, like in this example here. So now we're basing, and something you'll notice is my ulti is going to be up in 12 seconds. So of course, we're going to be deploying straight mid, looking for a play. The bot wave's already in a good state. Top wave's not really a problem for me. As we said before, tier 1 towers are expendable. We're fine to give them. And now I'm looking to be a part of this skirmish as well. So block the damage from Twitch. Looking to go on him, one-shot him. Really powerful champion in this type of skirmish situation. And in this game, the reason I went Sundered Sky second, of course this was before the nerf. This was your core item, pre-nerf, but nowadays I would probably have built a Sparrow Shojin in this game, I would say. The Renekton's their only tanky champion, and he's really far behind in build Eclipse, so Shojin would have been my second item in this game if I was playing on the live patch. So now for our next sequence, yet again, I finished my play mid, I based and I ran straight bot, looking to repeat the process, get the wave out and ulti as much as I can as soon as the spell is off cooldown. However, the Orianna's playing a bit too aggressive, she's a bit tilted I'd say from the early Pantheon rooms, bit of a benefit to the champ, and she does outplay me here, phase rushes out, which is not ideal, but it's still fine. I'm going to be looking to get out the wave and look to be a part of as many skirmishes and teamfights as I can. Now, because one broke out right now, before my ulti came up, I'm going to be flexible with it. I'm just going to rotate to this fight straight away and not tunnel on my side lane too much. Now, this is a mistake by my team, of course, forcing this fight on a timer that's not good for me, but you got to be very flexible when you play this champ. Now, I did misplay this skirmish a little bit. In hindsight, I should hold my W. Of course, Bard is going to be buffering it with this tunnel. It's a bit of a mistake by me. Definitely should have held it, and if I did hold it, I would have had a stun for this Fiddlesticks, so the play would have been better. But as you can see, buffer my E before I get feared, so I can block the majority of his ulti damage. And now for my next play here, I stun the Renekton, hoping that I can CC him for long enough that he can't one-shot my Graves. Because Graves was silenced, he was unable to E away, and he ended up getting killed anyway. So I still would have W'd him, even, in it's really easy to hindsight and be like, oh, he's silenced, wouldn't live. But peeling for your, for one of your carries in this game that Graves was playing quite well, it's still going to be a worthwhile use of your CC. Now, I choose to Q-Flash here. I was hoping to hit the Orianna and the Bard at the same time. As you can see, I Q-Flash autoed Orianna straight away, hoping to double kill them. So a little bit of a misplay. The Q angle was just off and the Bard lived 1 HP, but I'd still go for it again. Of course, it looked too juicy, right? Getting a 2-for-1 skewer, and we're able to win the skirmish regardless. So you can just see, even though I didn't get my wave out, even though I didn't have ulti, the conditions that we talked about before weren't met. You need to be flexible on this champion and still be a part of as many fights and skirmishes as you can. Might be some that aren't ideal, as long as you're not delusional with it, trying to run a 1v3 or a fight that's just completely going to be, lost no matter what. You should be able to be the difference maker, especially if you've gotten an advantage from your laning phase. So now heading back onto the map, you can most likely guess exactly what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be running straight mid out of base and looking to ult to any play that I can. Because this is a high-paced solo queue game, a lot of action mid. If nothing was happening, I would have looked mid the whole time, but gone to side, pushed it out, and ultied if a play happened. Because if fight happens, I choose not to ult here, by the way, because they're under tower, and these are low-value kills, so it wouldn't be really worth me risking a 1k shutdown for this. And with saying that, I'm about to do my biggest mistake of the game by far, still regret it, and have a really stupid death. So I run down here, I kill the Renekton, good hook by him, and now I break one of the rules that we talked about in this game, in the guide, sorry. I chase down this full HP guy, especially under tower, trying 100 to 0 him, and as you can see, I'm quite slow at 100 to 0 someone, even though I'm exceptionally fed in this game. It's just not really your identity on Pantheon. You can do it, and if this guy was in the river or something, of course I would have gone for it, but going for it under tower was just a stupid mistake. But even here, I could have pulled it off if I held onto my Q, like we talked about in the ability section, and aimed it properly. But because I missed this Q, I give a 1k shutdown over, but I shouldn't have even gone for that to begin with. Even though I could have killed him if I played it mechanically better, that was a 1-4 twitch or something like, 1-4 twitch. Definitely not worth me risking my life, getting chunked by tower, anything like that, for that kill. It's better for me to finish that play, kill the Renekton, get the wave in, head straight back to side, and be constantly looking for the next play with my ulti. So now heading onto the map, I'm going to be looking to speed up the pace of this game as fast as I can. Now, I could have gone bot here and pushed it out, but you'll notice that Yasuo, the 4-9 feeding side laning Yasuo, he's going to be doing that for me. So instead, I'm going to be adapting and just running straight to this Baron, helping my team get vision control, looking to punish them, play for picks with my Blitzcrank, and looking to speed up the pace of the game. I really want to be fighting at this timer when I'm really strong compared to the other champs in the game. Because although Pantheon doesn't scale as badly as some other bruisers, he scales actually quite well. He doesn't scale as well as mid and AD carry champs generally. If this game goes to late game, 6-item Twitch, Ace or Orianna, champs like that, of course they're going to be more useful than me. I'm going to feel a lot of pressure to one-shot them before they one-shot my team, so the game is a lot easier for me to force a Baron fight right now during my 1 to 2 item spike when every other champ in the game is a lot weaker than me. I do just that, I run straight to Baron, we luckily got a pick, we forced it down. If they played a little bit better and respected us on this timer, I would have got the waves out, I would have got the vision in the jungle, started Baron, and make them come to us. If you don't come to us, we're going to get Baron. If you do, I'm going to destroy you as Pantheon. Just make sure you're not the one hitting Baron as Pantheon, you should never be doing that. You want to be playing for your position in the team fight. But now my Graves, died for Raptors, something stupid, classic junglers. So I'm going to be looking to disengage and use my Baron at a later time. So now from this point, looking to head down to the map, I want to be pushing out the waves and utilizing our Baron, speeding up the game. Because the enemy team, playing quite aggressive mid, I'm going to be looking to punish them instead. So I do a pretty bad ulti here. We talked about using your ulti to predict their movement. I made a false prediction here. I thought they were going to be clicking away and running completely far out. I ulti here, but as you can see, the Blitzcrank hooks my Orianna. I didn't take that into account, of course, but she actually walked up before that point, so it was bad movement prediction on my part. The factor I didn't keep in mind here is that they have a Twitch. Twitch is, of course, a famous champion for popping up in mid lane and trying to make picks on your AD carry or your control mage mid, and in this case, control mage AD carry. So I should have put my ulti with more, according to that. I should have ultied more directly onto Orianna, and if she ran away, maybe she got away. That's fine, but if the Twitch popped up, which I saw him earlier hitting the mid tower, it's very likely he did so, my ulti would have been a lot better. So mistake, yeah, didn't take into account the specific champions on their team, so my ulti made me too far away, and I wasn't able to be the difference maker in this fight. I still was able to take a lot of people down, one-shot the Twitch here, and, do my job, but I could have been a lot more impactful if my ulti prediction was better. So you can always improve at placing your ulti on Pantheon. It's a skill that's quite hard to master, I would say. It does depend on, the players in the game, even the champions, how strong they are, how they're going to be playing. We just need to be thinking about how they're going to move based on what they see on the screen and try to predict it. Now, after we respawn, I'm going to be looking to head back onto the map and be a part of this dragon fight. I'm going to be looking to ult in, and then the first sign of action that I can see. But here I choose to ulti mid onto the Twitch. Now, originally when I placed my ulti, it did look like a good one. There was no one else on the screen, and even I knew if I didn't kill him, he would run away and be completely zoned from this fight. But in hindsight, of course, a fight broke out the second I ultied, classic, and I was not able to be directly into the action. But still fine, I zoned their main carry away from the fight, and we're still able to win it anyway. I come in and I'm able to clean up the kills. I'll slow down it in case you like to watch the skirmish. Jump on, of course, the damage threat, the fiddlesticks here, one-shot barred. And you can see Twitch wasn't a part of this fight because I zoned him earlier with my ulti. Who joins now, but it's a bit too late, right? The fight's already over, sorry, and I'm able to finish him off. If I can hit this Q, nice, got my revenge for last time. And I was still able to be the difference maker of this fight, but you can see there is a little bit of a danger of just ulting the first guy you see, because I didn't have it for the rest of that fight, but because my ulti placement, in my opinion, was quite good, he's either going to die and fight me, or he's going to get completely zoned from the fight. It was worth it in the end because he was a high priority target. So now after that play, we're just looking to base, head back onto the map, and close out the game as fast as we can. You'll notice I'll deploy for a mid around dragon, just in case a dragon fight breaks out. The death timers are quite long still at this point, probably a very low chance I can find it, but because this game was so action-packed, I didn't want to risk me going top and a fight breaks out and me not having ulti. So I hover around, and I do make a mistake here. Clearing this mid wave was quite bad, there's no point to it. I should head straight bottom when I realize they're not contesting dragon, and ulti mid if I need to. So I waste time here on this mid wave, but you can see right after I catch myself and I run straight bottom. I'm on my way bot, looking to push out the wave and ulti to any type of fight that happens. And as you can see, because the game's such a fast-paced game, they're playing aggressive, which shows on the wave I instantly popped my ulti, and the placement was a lot better this time. If he ran down here, I probably could have chased him down with empowered E movement speed, and if he runs back towards his teammates, which is the most likely option, which is why I placed it like this, he's going to run straight into my ulti. I even got the slowing spear onto him, and I was able to one-shot him with my ASOL. So we're going to look to close out the game from that, chase him down after the ADC kill, and the Fiddlesticks ulti's in here. I stun him, take him out, max range Q, 3-pointer over the wall. Great little triple kill there. But as you can see, even though I was on my way to bot wave, I was still constantly surveying mid and paying close attention. So if they played too aggressive or stepped up too far, I was ready to ult them and take them out. We're looking to close out the game now with those kills. It does take a bit longer, it's a bit of a sloppy end, so bear with me a little bit. But we're just taking out the end, waiting for a Blitzcrank hook. Hopefully you can get it. Unlucky on that one, and looking just to speed up the game. So ASOL's pushing out bottom. We're going to be looking to break double inhibs. Worst case scenario, we'll base after double inhibs, but because our Blitzcrank's a bit of a beast, getting hit some good hooks down, we can look to continue playing for the kills. So playing around my cooldowns here, WQ, step back. Not much chasing down people and, auto-attacking them to death, stuff like that. Playing around my cooldowns. Really key part about skirmishing and team fighting on Pantheon. So we get the tower. Great hook again. This guy's having the game of his life. Break the bottom nib, and now we're going to be looking to continue closing out this game. They're pushing in the mid wave, utilizing our super creeps, getting top tower as well. Actually, looks like my team wants to, but I'm just so keen to end. You can see I want to speed up the game pace. You can see my urgency on trying to get the Nexus done, where my team is killing, top tier 3, something like that, wasting their time. I have no interest in that. I want to get this game done. Good kill there, and we're able to close out the game. It's a bit of a sloppy end, but the main points I want you to take from this full game is you notice a bit of a pattern. You're probably getting quite sick of it, but every time I would base, I would be constantly studying the map, looking for any type of ulti play. You need to be really switched on when you're playing this champion and trying to really speed up the pace of the game, be a part of as many fights as you can, and close out the game early with your lead. Moving on to the draft, so you know what to watch out for in Champion Select. That'll indicate if Pantheon's going to be a good pick this game, or if maybe it's best to pick a different champion. Now, for the champions you want to be playing with, the champions that Pantheon are good with on your team. For jungle, it's going to be AP burst mages, so specifically champions like Talia work exceptionally well with Pantheon, as they can follow up your stun with a lot of burst. You generally want to avoid playing Pantheon top with a weak AD jungle, so we'll touch on that later. But the champions that are best with you, champions like Talia, champions like Karthus, even not quite as good, but champions like Nidalee or Evelynn, great with Pantheon and really easy for you to snowball in the early game. Now as for mid, it's going to be quite similar. Champions that can follow up your burst and CC, but also champions that can move around the map and make the game volatile. So champions like Talia in mid, champions like Ahri, really good combos with Pantheon, easy to follow up your CC and chain it together. Now as for AD carry, it's got to be champs that are a bit more self-sufficient, or just champs that can dive in with you. So champs like Kai'Sa, champs like Xayah pair really well with Pantheon, because you don't really want to be looking back, you just want to be going forward, ulting in. You don't really want to be creating space for your AD carry, so Kai'Sa and Xayah, they don't really need you to. Now, as for support, you want to be having dive buddies or champs that can primary engage the fight for you, so champs like Rel, champs like Rakan feel exceptionally good with this champion. And as for the champions you're bad with, or you don't want to be seeing on your team, from jungle it's going to be these weak AD scaling champions. So champs like Kayn, champs like Graves feel quite bad with Pantheon, as the most common counter to Pantheon are going to be tanky bruisers or neutralizers. And once they have ninja tabs, or even, they build armor as well, ninja tab Sunfire into Kayn Graves jungle with Pantheon top, feels very weak later on, but even in the early game, you want to be making the game volatile, trying to exploit the game. And don't get me wrong, a good Kayn or a good Graves player can do that, but let's be honest, in solo queue, most of the time, you play with Kayn or Graves, they're just farming it up, very slow-paced early game, which is what you want to be avoiding. Now, as from mid, it's going to be champs that don't really make the game very volatile. Champs that are very safe playing for scaling. So champs like Corki and Victor that just sit back, they're not really going to be very useful for you. Because if you're trying to explode the game through mid, and you ulti down, what's Corki with a tier gonna do? He's gonna package in, drop his Q. It's not really gonna be much follow-up, and even if you snowball him, it's still good for the game, don't get me wrong. And you should still look to do that, even if you do have a weak scaling mid. It's just not as effective, and your 2v2, 3v3, any type of skirmish is gonna be significantly weaker for having these weak champs on your team. And as for AD carry, it's going to be champs that really rely on having peels. So champs like Caitlyn or Aphelios, they want to have frontline, they want to have champs making space for them, but that's not really your job on Pantheon. Now, don't get me wrong, it can be, and if you have an Aphelios on your team that's 10-0, carrying all the boats and the logs, you should be trying to create space for him and trying to peel for him, but most of the time that's not really your win condition and your objective as Pantheon, so it's good to avoid champs like that. But don't get me wrong, bot lane doesn't really matter that much for picking Pantheon, so don't not pick Pantheon just because you have a champ like that on your team. And as for support, it's basically champs that sit back and do nothing. So useless champs, if you want to call them that. Champs like Karma, champs like Senna, they're pretty strong in lane for bot lane, but they don't really do much for you in the mid-game skirmishing. You're going to ulti in, Karma might chuck you in and powered Q, that's it. May give you a little shield. Not really what you want. You want champs like Alistair, Rakan, Rel, getting stuck in with you. But champs that just sit back and do little poke, don't really do much. Not really good for you for what you want to be achieving in the mid-game. Moving on to the enemy team, and in my opinion the champions where Pantheon is best against in top lane are going to be strong side laning champs. So champs like Jax, champs like Fiora, Pantheon matches quite well up against them in lane and in the mid game as well if you get a lead. Because these champs, not only is the matchup extremely difficult, if you get behind against Pantheon, it's really hard for you to make any type of play. You can't push out your wave, you can't create pressure, because Pantheon will just beat you down. So you can keep a Fiora, 0-2, maybe even 0-3, Fiora stuck under tower, and ulti plays. So you're not really going to have many options. You can't push out the wave all the way and get tier 2 before you make it back, and she's not very strong if she TPs and follows your ulti. She's not really going to contribute much to the fight, so it's really good to play Pantheon against champs like that. And as for jungle, it's going to be weak early game champs that rely on items and scaling, so champs like Hecarim and Evelynn, most of the time, these champs are just going to be farming until 6, constantly full clearing. Don't get me wrong, they will kill you, or your teammates if you're a free kill, but they're not really looking for ganks, unless you're 100% free. So if you play Pantheon, you can shove in your wave, run into the jungle, bully them off the blue buff or the red buff, try to go for kills, and make their game really difficult. And as for mid, you really want to be playing against champions that are very volatile. So specifically, melee champs are great, champs like Sylas or champs like Yasuo, who want to be going in and trading, they are not playing these champions in solo queue to sit under tower and respect your roam every 30 seconds. They really want to be creating advantages for themselves and playing aggressive, so if you're constantly looking mid to ult them every time they dash in, it can make it very hard for them to do so. Now don't get me wrong, it can be good to play Pantheon into immobile control mages, champs like Orianna, but in my opinion it's best into champs like Yasuo and Sylas because they can't really play to their win condition if you're looking to punish them. Now as for bot lane, it's going to be immobile champs, so champs like Jhin, champs like Twitch, you're really good into, and for support champs like Sonar and Soraka, champs with very low CC and very low peel for their AD carry, make it a lot easier for you to ulti in and get stuck in with the boys. Now as for the champions you're bad against, what you don't want to be seeing, for top lane it's going to be these big beefy neutralizing champs. So champions like Gragas, champions like Malphite, they have really good trading patterns into you, and also especially champs like Gragas have a lot of disengage, they can cancel your W with Gragas E, so not only in lane and team fights as well, they can be extremely annoying. And as for jungle, it's going to be champs with a lot of peel, champs like Poppy, champs like Talia can be really hard to play against because you're trying to get stuck in, ulti in the mid game, and you have to run through the Talia rocks, maybe Poppy W, Poppy ults your way. It can be really hard for you to make proactive plays. Now, as for mid, it's going to be champs that are really hard for you to pressure early game. So champs like Ahri, champs like Cassiopeia, if you ulti mid at 6 versus Ahri, she's just going to trade ultis with you and dash away, and it doesn't really feel quite as impactful as shutting down a Yasuo or burning an Orianna's flash or anything like that. Now, as for Cassio, you can punish her early, but she can buffer her ulti through your W and stun you on landing, you're going to get stuck in her W, the Cassiopeia, and get bursted down. And in the mid game, mid to late game, she can get really tanky. Like items like Saras, Rod of Ages, Frozen Heart can be really annoying for you to punish her in these mid game skirmishes. Now, as for bot lane, it's going to be champions that can easily self-peel. So champs like Draven, champs like Tristana are quite annoying because they can cancel your W quite easily with Tristana ulti or Draven E. And especially Tristana can buffer her W through your W, so it can be really hard for you to lock these guys down and punish them when you're ulting mid. And as for support, pretty similar reasoning. Champs with a lot of peel. So a great Thresh player can flay every single one of your Ws, which is very annoying, and you have to run through his box and hook. And Alistair as well, probably more ease of execution on that guy, just buffering you away with W, queuing you if you jump onto the AD carry. Really hard for you to execute your win condition against these types of champions. Now, before we move on from the drafting section, I do want to specify the most important things you're watching out for in the draft. First of all is, of course, going to be your top lane matchup. You do want to be playing Pantheon in a matchup where you can snowball and shut them down early. And the next is going to be jungle and mid. Bot lane actually doesn't matter that much in my opinion, because it's quite unusual that you can ulti bot lane and not lose a lot on the opposite side. Most of the time, you're going to be attacking jungle and attacking the enemy mid laner. So you really want to be seeing the enemy top jungle mid, if you can, before you pick Pantheon, and if you see some mobile mid or some volatile mid like a Yasuo or a Sylas, and jungle some weak champ early game, you really want to be looking to play Pantheon in that game. Your own jungle mid do matter, don't get me wrong, but not as much as the enemy top jungle mid. Those are your top 3 priorities. Next up, we're going to be covering how to play against Pantheon, how to counter this champion successfully. Now, what I do recommend is have a bit of a different approach when you're playing up against him. Don't go into the game trying to solo kill him, make him go 0-3, because a good Ignite Pantheon player can make that extremely difficult, and most likely that type of playstyle is going to be in his favor. But if you can play a champion that's very good at neutralizing him, and you prioritize making a neutral lane state, or even slightly winning for you, that is going to be better in the end. So if you can play champs like Skarner or Ornn, Gragas, and play more so to keep the lane even, stay high HP, poke him down, that's going to be more of a win condition for you. Don't tunnel into picking Jax or Camille into him and trying to solo kill him. You can do that, of course, if you have a skill gap against him, but the matchup is always going to be in his favor. What I recommend you do is try to leverage your TP to gain an item and an HP advantage, because he's going to have Ignite, you're probably going to have TP in most situations. So if you can find a timer when you can base and TP, and then look to push him under tower and keep him stuck in the lane and block his recall, you're going to be at an advantage, because you're going to be trading with him early game, and let's say he's half HP, you're 1/3, he's missing about, 2/3 of his mana, and you base and TP back, and you get a couple swords or double ruby, whatever you're playing, and then you look to push him under tower and keep him stuck. He's not going to be able to all-in you. Pantheon is not that good at all-inning full HP champions. He wants to be willing you down, but if you leverage your TP to get your resources back and play more of a resource style, waste his mana and his HP and TP back and keep him stuck in the lane, that's going to be more so in your favor than just tunnel visioning on, high dopamine trying to solo kill this guy, beat him down. That's going to make the matchup extremely volatile, which is what Pantheon wants most of the time. Now, if Pantheon plays extremely well and he takes good bases on his recalls, of course it's going to be harder for you to do that, but most Pantheons you play against are going to be tunneled on just trying to bully you and bash you down as much as you can, so you are going to get a timer to punish him. So for example, let's say he crashes the second or the third wave, playing really aggressive and pushing, and then the wave is bouncing back towards him. You want to be fighting him on the timer when you've got more creeps and more XP, and even though you won't be able to kill him, most likely, if you can crash the wave under his tower, base and TP, come straight back to lane, and keep him stuck under tower, it's going to be in your favor. Where I see a lot of players, they feel, oh, I'm up against a lane bully, I'm just going to base and walk back to lane, because I'm not going to miss much CS anyway, and I want to walk back in case he comes back and shits on me later. I want my TP to get my resources back. But if you TP back and keep him stuck in lane and block him from recalling, you're going to be in a much better position than if you walked back and used TP later on. So if he's stuck under tower, unable to base, doesn't have TP, his only hope is to get his jungler involved, but if you have a good ward, you play around that, that's going to be a game state that's favored for you, because if Pantheon can't chunk you down and can't all-in you, then he's not going to be able to get the most out of his champion. He's not going to be able to roam around and use his ulti, and that's another thing you need to keep in mind when playing against this champion. If he does get a base off, of course he should at some point, you need to be paying close attention to the mid and the bot matchup. You need to be watching how volatile it is, how overextended your mid or your AD carry is, and try to backping them as soon as Pantheon is leaving the base. Don't backping them after 10 seconds when he's based and you feel, oh no, he might be ulting somewhere. As soon as he bases, and you see him off of your screen, be studying the mid and the bot matchup and see the best possible outcome for him. If you are playing Pantheon, where would you want to be ulting? And if you see a good spot for him, try to backping your team ahead of time and ping the Pantheon portrait, of course, and so that your team can respect ahead of time before they get punished. Now we're going to be wrapping up the video with the main takeaways, the most important points I want you to keep fresh in your mind when you're learning or mastering this champion. And the first one is of course going to be Pantheon is the king of short trades. Not in every single matchup, of course. If you play against one like Gragas, it might be quite tough. But in most situations, you want to be abusing the fact that you can poke your opponent down without taking damage in response. Every time they go for a CS or go to trade onto you, if you can Q them, from max range Q and disengage the trade and play around your Q cooldown, which is exceptionally short, you're going to be in favor to win that matchup. You just keep poking him down, and when he's low enough, you can all in. Play more so for 100 to 0 trades. There are a lot of matchups versus strong bruiser champions where if you can poke them down before they can all in you, the matchup's going to be in your favor. But if you both get to 40% HP or you go for an extended trade when you're both high HP, it's not going to be in your favor versus the majority of the bruiser champion pool. Keep that in mind, 100 to 0 trades, really top priority for the majority of your matchups, but also because your champion is so powerful in lane and in early skirmishes, I want you to, when you're learning this champion, push yourself out of your comfort zone and try to be a lot more proactive. Because a lot of top lane champs, the game is not really, you're not really a part of the game in the majority of the early game. You can rock up to Dragon or gank mid or even gank bot in certain games, in certain situations, depending on your champion, but Pantheon is a champ that has a lot more options than the majority of the top lane roster. You really need to be pushing your limits and getting involved in the game. Attack jungle, mid, bot, attack dragon, whatever the option, present yourself in the game, try to push yourself out of your comfort zone and master that skill set on this champion. Now for the next point, you should always be looking to be as impactful as possible in regards to the mid lane matchup. In champ select and loading screen, pay close attention to not just your matchup but the mid matchup as well. Because if it's a volatile matchup, so for example you see champs like Kiana, Sylas, Talon, really aggressive champs that rely on snowballing to be more useful than the majority of the mid lane roster, you want to be looking to be as impactful as possible and trying to commit there with your ulti or even in the early game with a roam. Because it's so hard for the enemy mid laner to play aggressive on especially a melee champion or a short range mage champ with you looking mid every single time you crash your wave. And most solo queue players are not queuing up mid, sit under tower and respect the Pantheon roam every 30 seconds. They're looking to get ahead and carry the game as well, so if you can be the difference maker there, and screw the mid matchup, you're going to win a lot more of your games. Now that ties into the mid game as well. You should never be tunnel visioning on winning the game through side. You're not going to win a game on Pantheon. Well, you can win some, but you're not going to win the majority of your games from making the 0-4 Jax or the 0-4 Renekton go 0-10, breaking the tier 2, stuff like that. You're going to be winning the game through getting an early game lead and sharing that around the rest of the map. Push in the wave, make someone answer, and constantly be looking mid every single time with your ulti, or when you see dragons in 45 seconds, make sure you're in range to ulti if a fight breaks out, because both teams are going to be trying to get vision around dragon or baron, depending on the timer. So if you're in range to ulti, if a fight breaks out, you're always going to be one step ahead of the enemy top laner. So don't tunnel vision and focus too hard on just bullying your lane opponent, killing him inside over and over. Try to make him useless as possible by answering the tower, and you can kill him, don't get me wrong. If he overextends or tries to kill your wave that you need, just take him out, it's fine, but don't tunnel vision on that. Make him answer you, and then attack the rest of his team, and constantly be looking for plays with your ulti every single time that it's up. Alright everyone, I'm going to call it there. Now I hope this video helps you out on your Pantheon journey with your learning him or trying to master him. Hopefully it can help you out because he's such a strong champion to have in your pool. It can be a bit of a breath of fresh air, especially after playing a couple games where maybe your bot lane gets so hard destroyed, maybe mid jungle gets split, and you feel like you don't really have any agency in the game. Having a couple Pantheon games, having him ready in your pool, have a high agency, high impact early game, can feel quite good and a bit of a reset for you, especially after a tilted game before. There's a good champ to pick up, hope you guys give him a try, but other than that, I will see you guys next time.